One more time, the time is 7:09. At around 7:03, the council adjourned into a closed executive session to discuss pending or potential litigation. They hope that the session will last approximately 20 minutes. However, they may choose to extend that executive session. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you. All right, we're still missing a couple, but we do have a quorum. So let's go back and end executive session, go back into regular session. And I would like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional land of the first people of Kenmore and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Coast Salish people who thrive in this place, alive and strong. Next item on the agenda is a proclamation. And if you just bear with me a second. This is a National Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month. And whereas in 1968, Hispanic Heritage Month was originally observed as Hispanic Heritage Week to celebrate the extensive histories of the American Latino community, and was subsequently changed to a month-long commemoration in 1988. And whereas many Latino Americans trace their roots to the cultures of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, including the Arawak, the Aztecs, the Incas, the Maya, and the Taino. Some trace their roots to the Spanish explorers or to the Africans who were brought as slaves to the New World. And whereas the term Hispanic or Latino or Latinx refers to a person's culture of origin, those who identify having a Mexican, Mexican-American, Chicano, Puerto Rican, Cuban, and other Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. And whereas Hispanic and Latino Americans make our nation more vibrant through a diversity of cultures, languages, and religions. There is no single story of the Latin or Hispanic experience, but rather a diversity of contributions that enrich American culture and society. And whereas we celebrate and honor the invaluable contributions the communities have made to America's armed forces, arts, history, law, science, technology, sports, public service, and extensive farming and other physically demanding labor. And whereas Hispanic and Latino Americans contribute to or continue to enrich our region's economy, culture, education, politics, arts, history, literature, science, and technology developments, despite institutional and systemic injustices that prevent and limit these achievements and contributions. And whereas the Kenmore City Council reaffirmed its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion by naming it one of its top 3 priorities of 2021. And whereas the city recognizes that the Hispanic and Latino American community accounts for nearly an 8% of Kenmore's resident population, and therefore an invaluable force in shaping this community and its values. And whereas the city of Kenmore affirms that Hispanic and Latino Americans make our city stronger and our experience in Kenmore more enriching. Now, therefore, I, David Baker, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th as National Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month in the City of Kenmore, and call upon our community to celebrate this month with appropriate programs and activities. And with us tonight, we have Mr. Carlos Gil, President of the Latino Development Organization. And this nonprofit is dedicated to supporting educational and self-improvement services for Latino prisoners bilingually in Spanish and English at the Monroe Correctional Complex. The LDO believes that the fullest possible rehabilitation of every inmate. We are honored to have this group represented tonight and would like to give Mr. Gill a few minutes to share some thoughts. Mr. Gill, if you please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for this very noble and generous recognition of Latinos here in Kenmore and in Seattle in general. And so I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be a resident of Kenmore. And I think furthermore, I'm happy to be able to say honestly that I have very good feelings about the city government, the mayor, the city council. I have listened in on several council meetings, and so I feel good about the impression that I have. So I congratulate you all, and I thank you for this, for extending that proclamation to me and to my organization.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. It's truly good to see you again. And we appreciate your presence and your involvement in our community. Thank you.
Mucho gusto.
Next item on the agenda is another proclamation, and this one is to Falls Prevention Awareness Week. Whereas every person, regardless of their stage in life, deserves wellness and stability. And whereas in Washington State, more than a quarter of Washington residents over age 65 experience a fall. And whereas unintentional fall-related deaths account for more than half of all unintentional injury deaths of Washington residents over age 65. And whereas the total number of unintentional fall-related death among Washington residents over 65 continues to climb. And whereas in 2019 alone, non-fatal unintentional fall hospitalizations costs exceeded $1.1 billion. Whereas Washington has a 27% higher rate of deaths from falls than the United States as a whole. And whereas the city of Kenmore wishes to increase public awareness and educate older adults, caregivers, and healthcare providers about the risk factors and how to prevent falls. And whereas the city supports the National Council on Aging and their senior safety NCOA recommendations to prevent falls. And whereas NCOA's 5 steps to prevent falls includes practice of a balance or exercise program, talk to your doctor if you've had a fall or are afraid of falling, get your vision and hearing checked annually, keep your home safe, talk with your family, and ask for support. Now, therefore, I, David Baker, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim September 30th through September 20th through September 24th as Falls Prevention Awareness Week. The City of Kenmore, and call upon our community to learn the 5 simple ways to prevent falls when you age. And here to accept this award is one of our own former council members. He was a practicing, what's the word I'm looking for?
Family medicine?
Gynecologist, there you go, OBGYN doc, who delivered quite a large number of babies and decided when he delivered a baby from children he had delivered, it was time to retire. Our own, the Honorable Milton Curtis. If you
Thank you so much.
Words, please do, sir.
So I was actually family medicine who happened to do obstetrics as well. So I'm one of the old kind of doctors. So thank you for allowing me to receive this proclamation on behalf of all of the people who dedicate their time to preventing falls in seniors. That includes primary care providers and their nurses, physical therapists and occupational therapists, firefighters and paramedics, state and county fall coalitions, and federally funded programs such as the Area Agency for Aging. It's a huge problem and a lot of people are involved. I'm committed to taking what I learned in 35 years as a family medicine doctor to help seniors decrease their risk of falls and maintain their independence as much as possible. Our Senior Fall Prevention Initiative is a nonprofit that serves seniors by evaluating their specific risks online and providing recommendations to prevent falls. So I figured once I retired from medicine, I have too much to still share. So this is my focus now, helping seniors prevent falls. So thank you for this recognition that the governor has given for the whole state.
And thank you very much. And I guess you're now Commissioner Curtis. Thank you.
I think I'll be joining you, watching later in that role.
Yes, indeed. All right. Next item on the agenda is a presentation from Puget Sound Energy, a report on 2020 system reliability and project activity in Kenmore, presented by Assistant City Manager Nancy Ousley and Puget Sound Energy's Municipal Liaison, Julien Lowe. Julien, good to see you.
Mayor, good to see you. Deputy Mayor Herbig, council members, great to see you all.
Good evening, council and mayor and deputy mayor. Tonight, we are hearing from Puget Sound Energy. This is the second report that they have provided to the council and to the community on system reliability and investments that the company has been making to improve the performance of our electrical service. You'll recall that the council approved an updated franchise agreement with PSE in June of 2019, along with a memorandum of understanding for performance and reliability. Both of these agreements have 5-year terms, which means they expire in 2024, and the franchise agreement can be extended by 5 years upon the request from PSE. The memorandum of understanding calls for annual reports to the city on reliability, unscheduled outages, and investments made for improved system performance. This is the second report that PSE has made to the council and covers system performance and actions in 2020. You'll probably recall that when we got started with the new franchise agreement, the reliability of our electrical system and services was a big concern in Kenmore. And I always like to think that, you know, having the report at this time of the year when the weather is starting to change and we're thinking about fall storms, it's a good time to be reminded of where we stand with respect to reliability. Leading up to this new agreement, an independent analysis found that 9 of the 10 circuits serving Kenmore in the years 2010 through 2014 performed at a not very desirable level. More than 60% of the circuits in the entire system that PSE owns and operates performed better. When you take into account number of outages and time lost in outages. Of those 9 that were at that 40% level or below, 7 of them were actually performing at the 25% level, meaning that 75% of the circuits in the system were more reliable. And so a number of steps were pointed out in both the MOU and the franchise agreement. And also a goal was established to getting those lowest performing circuits up to that 40% level by year 3 of the agreement. And we're very encouraged actually with how things are progressing. The investments that PSE has made even in these past couple of years in updating equipment, and I think all of us have noticed the vegetation management has really improved as well as additional improvements planned for Kenmore's customers. We agree that progress is being made. And I will say one thing as well, and that is that the communication between the city and the company is really very much appreciated. And Julien and Patrick do a great job of keeping us informed. So with that, I am going to turn over the presentation to Julien Lowe and Patrick Robinson, and they will give you an overview of what we've learned over this past year, what happened in 2020 with respect to reliability and importantly, the kind of investments that PSE continues to make.
Great.
Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Patrick and I are very pleased to be back again to make this presentation. It's going to be largely similar in format to last year's, where we will recap the capital investments we've made, recap some of the data in the report, describe some of the context behind that data. We'll also talk a little bit about storm preparedness. Nancy's perfectly right that this is a really good time of year. Myself and my colleagues are making the rounds with a variety of city councils, reminding jurisdictions and their constituents that now is the time to get prepared. Also, we'll be speaking to some of the other programs and efforts Puget Sound Energy has underway, and then also checking in about our efforts on sustainability, which I also know is a priority for the council. So with that, I will hand it over to Patrick.
All right, I will share my screen here. And assuming someone will tell me if you can't hear me, can I get confirmation that you see this blue-green screen? All right.
Yes, we do.
Yep. Thank you very much. To start off with, we've just got a recap of what we've been working on for the past 5 years. I think to start with, I'll kind of go over some of the geographic distribution that we have of our infrastructure. You can see right here, close to downtown, we have the Kenmore Substation. Down here, Inglewood Substation. Outside of the city boundaries, Wayne Substation serves parts of Kenmore, and North Bothell Substation also has circuits serving parts of the city. So the Kenmore Substation covers this northwest corner and actually comes all the way down between Juanita Drive and the Lakeshore. Kenmore Substation serves a fair majority of the city. Inglewood has 2 circuits down in this southeast corner, as well as serving into Kirkland. Wayne Substation and North Bothell serving, I guess North Bothell is this northeast corner. Wayne Sub kind of follows 522 and the slough all the way into Juanita Drive there. but is also shared with the city of Bothell. And so this is just kind of a overview of where you've been seeing improvements, what's been going on, includes transmission upgrades, substation upgrades. Those substation upgrades were heavily focused on, I guess, kind of smart grid technology, which is the distribution automation projects you'll see listed through here, automatic reclosers and equipment similar to that basically help us to compartmentalize the grid, take each circuit and make them smaller so that we have more control over where the power is. If a circuit goes out, we can break that circuit into smaller pieces and get power back to folks quicker. Also looking at some, we have a cable remediation program, which is basically going through and addressing wires as they age and need replacement that are underground. And several of these are also putting in tree wire, which is an insulated overhead wire that does a little better, performs a little better when tree branches come into contact. So this is a map that was presented last year and at previous presentations, and we're building on it, showing you what where all these improvements are going. So this is just a quick couple photos of our folks out in the right of way doing tree trimming, vegetation management on a 4-year tree trimming cycle for each circuit. And then every 2 years, we kind of go through, do maintenance, any locations where growth may have come in faster than expected or planned for. Transmission is on a 3-year cycle. This past year, 2020, 5 miles of transmission lines were treated, 14 miles of the smaller distribution. That kind of adds up to about 2,300 trees and about $300,000 worth of work that our crews were doing out there. Got a couple more photos for you here. Just kind of showing you some of the new stuff going in. The Inglewood substation fall of last year had some new smart breakers installed. This is part of the planning for just the smart grid technology at large. They help us to communicate remotely with the equipment that's going in. And to the right, this smart recloser was one that went in on Kenmore 23, which is down along Juanita Drive, but you may notice these going in all around the city. But so I guess I got a pointer here. This is the equipment. It helps kind of to break the circuit into multiple pieces. It comes down here and is attached to this box, which allows for communication with the smart breakers and our office, as well as manual manipulation to one of our servicemen can come in there as well. But so these are just some changes that you may be noticing on the infrastructure. And so, sorry, let's see. Trying to advance this slide. There we go. Just a quick overview of what we've been looking at. Reliability in Kenmore has continued to improve over the last several years. In 2020, Kenmore's average outage duration did exceed PSE's system average. That was driven pretty much by one transmission outage just outside the Kenmore substation. The pole outside the substation was a transmission pole, and it broke while it was being worked on as part of a larger project in that area. The sequencing of the procedures there led to that break, and so PSE's adjusted its practices to avoid that situation going forward. And then for 2021 to 2023, continuing to do more of the same projects, the smart grid distributed automation, installing tree wire. The cable remediation program is fixing lines underground, and substation upgrades will continue. Wayne Substation is going to get the same treatment that Kenmore and Englewood received. And so this is, we got a couple graphs here for you to basically give you some visuals of the information I just provided. This is looking at the high level macro perspective for the city of Kenmore. These bars represent what the average Kenmore resident has been experiencing in outage duration. So back in 2015, average Kenmore household was looking at 5,800 plus minutes of an outage. So that's days. I guess for reference, 2016 at 1,600 minutes is about a day, but more recently we're looking more at hours. So overall, big picture, that's been a very positive trend. And this is getting into a little bit more detail, looking at each circuit and the total customer minutes on each of those circuits over the last 5 years. I can give you a quick run through of the geographic distribution again. This Englewood 4 substations are down in the southeast corner. Kenmore, these 4 through here, serving northwest corner and the waterfront. North Bothell is serving the northeast, and Wayne is coming in from Bothell following 522 in the slough. So overall trending down, fewer minutes out per circuit over the last 5 years. The 2020 is the yellow bars, and so you will notice the Kenmore substation with that transmission interruption that did hit all 4 circuits. It's driving most of the time you're seeing there. Yeah, otherwise the other major outage was last year. You'll see in these green bars was, as mentioned, I believe last year we talked about the landslide late in the year along Holmes Point Drive. So we've got a few things driving outages, but overall still seeing that strong trend towards fewer minutes with outages.
And Patrick, if I could just jump in, as we were getting started with the franchise agreements, I think we talked a lot about Circuit 26 and 27, and you can see how high those earlier year graphs were running as far as outages.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, those have seen it, particularly some transmission improvements, as well as the Kenmore substation smart grid tech. So a lot of work done on those circuits. One more graph here for you, looking at the ranking of each circuit. I've got a note down here just because it may be slightly counterintuitive. The previous graph, more minutes, was a negative, so high bars were bad. Now we are looking at the reliability of each circuit as ranked versus all the circuits in PSE, and the percentile of that. And so high bars here are going to be better. Light green is a 5-year rolling average. Dark green is the 2020 specific. And so looking to pull up some of those averages, get them a little bit higher. Englewood, North Bothell, and Wayne all improved. 2020 was better for them than the 5-year average. Kenmore struggling because of that one outage that we've mentioned and seen on the previous graph. So just a recap of the investments, 25 million year to date, so 2016 to present, when we started working with the city on this. And we've seen the transmission line rebuild. 2 of the substations serving the city have been upgraded. The distribution, which is what's leaving the substation and going to homes, has been rebuilt on Kenmore circuits 23, 26, and 27. The 77 underground cables, that's the cable remediation project. So proactively seeking out cables as they age, and getting down underground and fixing them. I'll note that while underground cables generally are protected better from things like trees or car accidents, when they do go out, you have to find where it went wrong underground. It's a little bit harder to see. So restoration generally takes a little bit longer on underground cables, which is why we do that proactive sort of testing and replacement so that we don't have those longer outages. And then vegetation management, I touched on briefly, but since 2017, 110 miles of circuit trimmed for just over $1 million. So similar map to what we saw earlier, but now we're looking into the future next couple of years. Yeah, same breakdown of tree wire going in, substations being upgraded, smart technology being installed, and this list down here, a lot of underground cables to be replaced. That budget was hit hardest during COVID here, so a lot of underground cables will be hitting the, or I guess those projects will be hitting the street in the next couple of years. And with that, I'm going to let Julien finish off these last few slides.
Thanks, Patrick. So certainly recognizing that as a part of our memorandum of understanding as a part of the franchise, we certainly recognize Kenmore's interest in vehicle electrification. And so we were showcasing some of the workplace charging that was made available. We also had installed at a multifamily location. And I'm also pleased to report that Puget Sound Energy has received approval to expand its Up and Go electric program. You may see some commercials on television showcasing our Up and Go program and some of the public charging available. So we definitely want to keep that conversation going with the city as it looks to expand vehicle electrification and charging throughout the city, working with its residents and businesses. Also, been in contact with Kenmore staff and Metro about the Park and Ride project and about vehicle electrification and transit electrification opportunities there as well. Next slide, please. And certainly recognizing that clean energy is a priority for the City Council. Again, I just wanted to quickly recap and touch on the tenets of the Clean Energy Transformation Act. We are continuing implementation of that. We are entering into power purchase agreements with renewable project developers to continue to bring on more renewables into our portfolio. And then also certainly, this is the lens that many public policies are now going through, and a very critical one is that of equity. How can you provide cleaner energy and having an equity lens to that? And so we've convened leaders from the nonprofit and business sectors from throughout our service territory to do that work. And that equity advisory group has been convening, providing some really valuable feedback as we look to implement CETA. We want to make sure that we're balancing all priorities, including safety, reliability, and affordability. Next slide, please. Of course, we wanted to really take this opportunity to talk about storm preparedness and our bill payment assistance programs, certainly recognizing that's a priority for the city of Kenmore as well. And so again, first of all, really want to encourage folks to go to their Apple Store or Google app and search engine find the Puget Sound Energy app and download that to your phone. It's really the best way to stay connected. You can also visit our website to check on the outage map, and then also calling as well. And so certainly talked with council members during storm season about all the ways to stay in touch, because not everyone has a smartphone. And so again, all those resources are available for folks to report outages and then also get updates as well. Social media being another resource. And then, I've been here at council talking about what we've been doing to assist customers throughout the pandemic. And unfortunately, we are still in it, not out of it. And so PSE is continuing to provide critical bill payment assistance to all our customers. Last year, we provided $9 million in bill payment assistance to those who were affected by the pandemic. Those are customers who have lost their job, had their work reduced, or had a family member in the home suffer from lost work or reduced work as a result of the pandemic. We have tripled that effort, providing $27.7 million to our entire customer base. To date, I believe roughly 13 million of that has been provided in the form of bill payment assistance and also bill forgiveness as well. And so this is in addition to our other programs listed there as well. And the governor's moratorium on utility shutoffs is ending September 30th. And so I have a toolkit of materials that I'll provide to staff, but really hoping that you council members, mayor, city through its various channels, newsletters, can really get the word out about our COVID bill payment assistance. And again, we want to let customers know this has been a challenging time for all of us, and we want to work with them to make sure that bills are manageable moving forward. And so that, I believe, is the recap. So again, really, thank you again so much. Again, happy to take any questions.
Do you have any questions? Councilmember Kogler.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Patrick and Julien. I don't have so much a question. I just have a request for maybe the next time that we meet, and that is to learn more about the 100% carbon-free energy action plan that is in the works. We would love to hear more about that. It's our council's, one of our top 3 goals is climate action. So if we could learn more about that and the ways that Puget Sound Energy may be working with municipalities to reduce, to transition from fossil gas to electrification. I would love to hear more about that, and I bet others would as well.
Thank you.
So Councilman, are you referring to CETA and our efforts to be carbon? Yeah. And so that is a state law that was passed in session a couple of cycles ago. That applies to our electric system. And we are working to be carbon neutral by 2030 and carbon free by 2045. And yes, that does, involve, reducing coal in our portfolio, and certainly willing to provide regular updates. We're required to do so as a part of CETA, which is to report on a regular basis, and we can certainly share those reports, as we progress there. I want to take this moment. Patrick and I both have been working with Cascadia and also city staff on its efforts to implement its climate action plan. We work with a variety of jurisdictions throughout our service territory, recognizing that climate at the local level is a huge priority. And so whether it's efforts related to strategic energy management, That's a program we have on energy efficiency to work with, folks on their energy usage in terms of larger commercial and municipal customers. That's certainly a program that we're putting forward. We are also in the works to roll out a renewable natural gas effort. Again, fully recognizing that folks want to reduce their usage of natural gas. And then, certainly understand the elements involving, what folks are looking to do as it relates to fossil fuels and buildings. We feel that as a part of our Beyond Net Zero commitment, we are looking to reduce and use natural gas sales by approximately 30%. I think I've mentioned that to council in the past. Definitely, one of the things that we do talk about when it comes to, building electrification is that on our coldest days here in Western Washington, natural gas does provide a great deal of heating load to homes and businesses and has industrial applications as well. And we feel that, natural gas is a complementary energy system to electricity, and that there are going to be trade-offs, and that as communities look to electrify, that it's going to need to involve certainly, understanding what impacts if you have less natural gas usage in the building sector, what does that ultimately mean to, at the end of the day, the poles and wires that are in our communities. And so we know that that's a priority that you hear from constituents about, and we're going to be there to work with City of Kenmore and many other jurisdictions locally on that effort.
Any other questions? Thank you all very much. We certainly appreciate hearing from PSE, and we appreciate you keeping us informed.
Absolutely.
Next item on the agenda is citizen comments. We want to welcome our community members to the council's meeting. In this forum, the council cannot engage or dialogue with the public. The primary role of the council is to listen. All comments must be addressed to the mayor and city council. Please use the raise hand feature if you wish to speak. The clerk will acknowledge your request and call your name when it is your turn. Your time will start when we confirm that we can hear you. Please state your name and city of residence for the record, and keep your comments to the allotted time. Your time cannot be granted to another, and your clock time will not be reset unless there are extenuating circumstances and the presiding officer has expressly allowed it. Screen sharing is not allowed, and you can submit materials to the council or clerk in advance. Please do not comment about pending development projects on which the council will make future decisions, as those are quasi-judicial in matters, and the council must limit their communications about such matters. This meeting is being recorded, and thank you for taking the time to express your comments. Will the clerk please call the first person?
Thank you, Mayor Baker. We do have quite a few hands raised. I think we'd like to take the first group of guests in this order. Rose Zhang, followed by David Morton, Victoria Graylin, Patrick O'Brien, and Janet Hayes. Rose Zhang, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, stand by while we put the timer on the screen to assist. Okay, you may begin.
Okay. Well, thank you, Consul, and thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor. My name is Rose Zhang, and I live in Up Lake, Kenmore. And I joined tonight because I would like to share a few things about my about Falun Gong, or it's also called Falun Dafa, which is originated from China, but millions of people are practicing in the world, including many people who live in America. But because of the number of people practicing Falun Gong in China since 1992, and the Chinese Communist government was afraid of the large number of people participating in something free of our will and independently from the government control. So they decided to ban the practice. And since 1999, large number of people have been arrested in prisons, labor camps, and forced labor camps, and mental hospital, and you name it. So facilities by the government. And then many were tortured to death, like over 4,000 are confirmed. We have names and their addresses and all that, but many others are still missing. And also we have evidence to prove that things since 2000, so the government-run hospitals have been forcibly removing Falun Gong practitioners' organs and sell them for big profits. So here I live in Kenmore, and I also volunteer for our state local nonprofit organization. We call it Falun Dafa Association in Washington State. So we mainly do two things. First off is to bring awareness to people, to let people know, so we can all work together to stop the persecution, because it's still going on, including the forest organ harvesting. So people are being killed just because of their faith. And so the second thing I'm trying to do is we also bring Xingyin Performing Arts, which is, mission is to revive the traditional Chinese culture and civilization. So, so that these are the two major things, and it's also one of the and the reasons why I decided to join you. So I really appreciate the opportunity to let me speak tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rose. David Morton.
Hi, good evening, council members. I'm David Morton. I live near Redmond. On August 11th, 2021, I requested from WSDOT all available public records for the previous 8 years pertaining to DOT's testing of samples from the asphalt plant in Kenmore. So far, all I've received are 17 mixed design reports with results of testing the plant's paving mixes. The tests only show whether the paving mixes are approved for DOT's Qualified Products List, or QPL. I'm still waiting for tests of the plant's binder. A bar chart of number of asphalt samples tested versus time shows that DOT's QPL test was done only about once a year. There was a 19-month period when no samples were tested. Watson Asphalt in Redmond has a similar history. Back on October 20th, 2015, the executive director of PSCAA gave the Redmond City Council an update on their inspections of Watson Asphalt. He said that their last annual inspection of Watson did not find that Watson violated their permit or that they were using cutback asphalt. The director does not mention that PSCAA makes no effort to ensure that Watson does not use cutback asphalt as binder. He stated that use of cutback asphalt would violate specifications from DOT, which periodically tests the product. He feels PSCAA does not have reason to believe Watson uses cutback asphalt since DOT performs these periodic tests. I requested from WSDOT all available public records for the previous 6 years pertaining to DOT's testing of Watson's binder. DOT tests Watson's binder and asphalt paving product only when Watson is under a state contract or when a city or county requests that WSDOT perform such tests. Watson employees draw the sample from only one of the 6 storage tanks which feed Watson's mixer. Watson needs only to show that one tank contains undiluted binder. DOT tested 62 samples of Watson's binder from 2009 through 2015. In 2012, only 7 samples were tested for the entire year. In 2013, only 3 samples. In 2015, no samples were tested. No samples of Watson's binder were tested from July 2014 through December 2015. Remember, PSE does not believe that Watson uses cutback asphalt because DOT periodically tests the product. DOT did not test Watson's binder for 18 months, during which time Watson used over 7.2 million gallons of untested binder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. Victoria Grayland, Vicki Grayland.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Vicki Grayland and I live in Kenmore. First, I'd like to talk about Puget Sound Energy. At the last opportunity to speak about them, I told you all that I was going to opt out of a smart meter. I was then, of course, charged $15 per meter to have it manually read. Well, guess what? This year, for 5 months in a row, Puget Sound Energy estimated my gas, and no person was sent out. But guess what? They still charged me for the manual reading. I complained to the UTC, and guess what? It's totally legal. So please keep that in mind as you move forward with your new contract with this company. And next, I'd like to talk about the Smamish River. Many of us have concerns for the Smamish River and its restoration. I recently learned that Forterra, a King County nonprofit, discovered that King County government had allocated $1.2 million to planning such restoration, but that the money had been stuck somewhere in the King County system, perhaps because of COVID. Tomorrow is the hearing for the King County Flood District program. Many of our citizens plan to be there to ask the council to release those funds. You know the saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. We need to protect salmon in that river, and we need to do that without using glyphosate, the carcinogenic that Forterra still uses and that Kenmore has stopped using. Seattle outlawed it several years ago. So my ask is that the King County Flood Control District release the money and make a condition of that money that no toxins like glyphosate be used. Kenmore has proved that they are not necessary, but we do need a coordinated effort with the communities upstream. This plan could make that happen. And many thanks to Rob Carlinci and Richard Sawyer for informing me on this issue. Thank you, City Council.
Grayland. Patrick O'Brien.
Good evening, Patrick O'Brien, Kenmore, Washington. I've sent you each a copy of a letter, an agreement that was formed between Puget Sound Clean Air and the city of Kenmore. And my statement is that we have the ability to actually conduct tests at the asphalt plant and find them. And if you look at the part B of that letter, it clearly states that when human health is affected, animal or plant, then you can take action. And no action has taken, well, I'd certainly like to see a list of citations written by the city of Kenmore to the asphalt plant. I'd like to see what fines were levied against them to cover the costs of having Bridget Baker and other people go down there and check on them. I'd also like somebody to address the fire hazard for cutback being highly flammable, being used at our Kenmore asphalt facility, and it's been noted in citations, and nobody's taken action on that. And those airplanes that everybody, I think, in this meeting attended, saw the value of Kenmore Air. And if that place goes up in flames because of they're using illegal binders, cutback asphalt, then you only have yourselves to blame. And as far as CO2, well, we can all stop breathing because we all exhale CO2, but why don't we start with the asphalt plant? It seems to make a lot of sense. And then also we see that Froon Hall is just sold up by the Kenmore gun range. That site is polluted with arsenic, which means they're selling that, which means the Froon Hall down from the 182 and the topsoils place might be available for parking for the park whose name I can't pronounce. And then I want to see more transparency in the boathouse deal and all other deals that have council members or their spouses as part of it. I think it's abominable to cut deals and give favoritism, as was going to be the case with the baseball field. And you can go right on down the line of questionable city expenditures. And the last questionable one was, of course, the maintenance facility, which was done not in accordance with transparency, was even expected to sell off land, after the fact. And that was nowhere near a public disclosure of interested parties that were part of the process. So, I only have to look at a few of the deals and say, come on, guys, make the city manager step up and do some full reporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Janet Hayes. Janet Hayes.
Hi.
Hi, we can hear you and see you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Janet Hayes, and I am a resident of Kenmore. And I wanted to particularly thank David Morton for his email today. I know that all of you received it. I think it's very important that you click on to his 3-minute comment that he made in his fight against bad air in Redmond. It's part of that email, and you will be amazed and you will be horrified at the same time. And I thank you, David. You've done this 34 times, I see. And I don't know that we've heard anything but maybe two meetings with Cascadia, who the city has hired. So you guys ought to examine that. And the other thing that I wanted to say was, in a normal council meeting, like we used to have pre-COVID and didn't have for a few years before that, stopped having town hall meetings. It's very off-putting to come to a meeting and not know who is there. I don't have anything on my computer that shows me that I'm able to look at who's participating. And I think it's only fair and only comfortable knowing who's at our meetings. In a real public meeting at the city hall, we always got to see who was there. And we knew maybe who to elect. We knew who cared more than who else. But please, if you would possibly change that or correct it. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 additional hands raised. Stacy V, followed by Nancy at Glenwood Gardens. And if you still wish to speak, now is the good time to raise your hand. Stacy V.
Hi, Stacy Valenzuela. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. We, the residents, would like to be kept informed of any updates on the Kenmore Industrial Site remediation and testing, as well as updates on the asphalt plant and public works. We would like to see more transparency. In regards to PSE, our block on 175th has had few days in the last few weeks of August where we had 8 to 18-hour outages. For some homes and businesses, it took hours to bring the replacement underground line from Bellevue to this area. 481 to 487 people were affected or units were affected without power. In other areas, they reported flickering, and most of us were without Wi-Fi as well. Initially, the cost of Rhododendron Boathouse was $600 to $711K under the Waterways and Walkways bond. I did not see or hear any agenda item to increase the budget to over millions. Is the total cost been divided among the school board and the other two row clubs? Are they still responsible for only $250K each? What cost is the city picking up for the public's interest? I do not see where and when the public can use the facilities on the public land without being forced to join the Kenmore Row Club. Am I missing something? There seems to me that there is a huge conflict of interest as city council member that also is a board member and has been for years on the Row Club. Should they be able to vote in past, present, and future on any agenda items or funding that would benefit this same Row Club? The management of the Kenmore Boathouse should be independent party that does not give a priority to one club over the other parties. The majority of the use should go to the public. The Kenmore Row Club should be on a lease and paying rent for the use of the boathouse, just like the North Shore School District. Same with any use of Ta'achdi's Park building use from the kayak and dragon boat clubs associated with other council members. In regards to the Ta'achdi's Park, formerly Squires Landing, the wildlife and birds will not be enhanced by any way with cement and asphalt parking lot, plaza, picnic area, or handheld craft washing stations being added, just as cars should not be washed on cement as the runoff pollutes our waterways, so does the runoff off handheld craft. The wetlands, ecosystems, and shoreline need to be protected and preserved. And just one more thing, the Duwamish who first occupied these lands should be more than just acknowledged. They are asking that we stand in solidarity.
Nancy at Glenwood Gardens. Nancy.
I'm Nancy Hansen in Kenmore. To Mayor Baker and council members. At the time of the 2019 SEPA process for the Squires Landing site, Kenmore contacted the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe Fisheries Division. No other tribe that actually inhabited this site was contacted. Since the majority of the project is on land or wetlands, it seems likely Kenmore did not do enough to find the appropriate information. Thanks to citizen input on the new name, Chilocades, we now know that Indigenous people used the site for growing. It's generally known that the Duwamish inhabited most of the shores of Lake Washington, and especially where waterways enter the lake. So we contacted the Duwamish tribe to see if they knew anything about the project going on here and whether they had knowledge of having inhabited the site. The answer was yes. They had had a village in the general area where Swamp Creek enters the Smamish River. The environmental director, Andrew Gruder, at the Duwamish Longhouse in Seattle confirmed they hadn't been contacted for comment to SEPA. He requested a meeting with the tribal chair, Cecile Hansen, and they decided the response to Kenmore is Kenmore had not had not followed the process for free, prior, and informed consent. That's FPIC in the future. And they were not happy with this. The reason this is an issue is that Kenmore is obligated through the FPIC in relation to rights of self-determination and non-discrimination that are part of treaty obligations which states have under Common Articles 1 and 2 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, also the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. These were both adopted by the UN in 1966 and finally ratified by the US in 1994. Here are a few highlights of that. The reasons why free, prior, and informed consent is important to understand. All levels of government are bound and should be in full compliance with the international law of human rights. We know leadership at higher levels of government has been lacking on climate change. This is where local governments can fill the gap because they are able to go beyond and respect wisdom of those who lived within the limits of our ecosystem. Looking to the future, it obligates states to fulfill principles that include a right to live a healthy environment, the right to maximum transparency and accountability, and a right to halt a project which damages the environment. The message to Kenmore is that it's important for the council and city to learn more, since local communities are where these issues are more likely to arise and where change to better practices and climate change can happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Mayor Baker, I don't see any additional hands raised.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Is there anybody else wishing to be heard? We thank you for your comments tonight, and we will continue to take them into consideration as we move forward. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
And no? The ayes have it. The consent agenda stands approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the business agenda. We'll get an update from representatives of the North Shore Fire Commission and firefighters local union local 2459.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. All right. So my name is Rick Webster, and so anyway, good evening, and I want to thank you for allowing me the time to present this. I'm the chair for the North Shore Fire Department Board of Commissioners. First of all, I want to let you know some of my background. I am a retired contractor from the Seattle area. I graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in construction management and real estate development. Over the last 40 years, I've been involved in a number of multi-million-dollar union projects as a partner and then as an owner of my construction company. This has given me a good background in running large operations and controlling the budgets. Approximately 2 years ago, I was asked to become a member of the Board of Commissioners. After speaking with a number of stakeholders, it was apparent that regionalization is a priority. I agreed and became a commissioner. If at all possible, I ask that you hold your questions until I have finished, and I'll be happy to answer any inquiries after my presentation. So, okay, the first, this is our homepage here. And I just wanted to state that this service contract thing, we know it's a big deal. So that's the reason why I'm coming before you. I want to keep it open and transparent. On our homepage, you can see on the circled item is a button that you can push that will bring up all the current information, and it's updated as fast as anything that we get coming in. We post it to this site. And again, it's for complete transparency. So we'll go to the next slide, please. What's on the website is, as you can see, is a public input, key dates, FAQs, and scope of work, criteria for evaluation, the proposals from Eastside and Eastside Rescue and Shoreline Fire Department, and they're both due on 9/15, and current North Shore Fire Department organizational charts. There's also a bunch more information, as we'll show later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. Public input. The Board of Commissioners values input from the citizens and stakeholders of Lake Forest Park and Kenmore. There are several ways to provide input regarding the contract for services. Attend the September 28th virtual open house at 7:30 via Zoom. You can click on our website and get an invite to the Zoom right there. And there's other social media. And we're also hoping that we can get that added to the Kenmore website, Kenmore City website, to disseminate. The second item is complete the public survey, and that's coming out soon. We have a meeting tomorrow. We'll be completing that and getting it posted and out in multiple websites and everything. Email questions and comments to our board secretary at boardsecretary@northshorefire.com. And we'll also stay connected. As you can see, we have Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Next slide, please. Why now? This is not an effort to circumvent the public rejection of merger vote. In 2019, we contracted with Woodinville for fire chief services. We contracted with Bothell for fire marshal services. And prior to the merger vote, North Shore Fire Department consolidated administrative functions with Woodinville. North Shore Fire Department was run well at considerable cost and savings for our taxpayers. North Shore has held open the fire chief and the fire marshal positions in anticipation of this consolidation. Woodinville have contracted with fire services with Eastside Fire and Rescue as of October 1st. Our ILAs for fire chief and shared administration services ends. The contract for fire marshal with Bothell is month to month. Next slide, please. The board has explored our options. We've looked at interim chief, fire chief, and fire marshal. We do not have members with the required experience or training. We looked at hiring new fire chief and fire marshal, and we found we did not have time to complete the fire chief and fire marshal hiring process. We do not believe that these are viable options. We initially planned to advertise for RFP for fire service contract. Instead, we made a direct request to Shoreline and Eastside Fire and Rescue. Our research showed that these agencies were the only viable responses from these agencies, and the responses for these agencies are due on September 15th. Time to make the consolidation process is now. Next slide, please. Why a contract for services? How is this different from a merger? We've learned some things after a decade of consolidation exploration. In 2014 and 15, it facilitated regional fire authority effort with Bothell, North Shore, and Woodinville. The path forward eluded us due to, in part, to a different financial models, city versus fire district financial systems, especially the reserve funding issue. Also, Woodinville and North Shore were blocked from merger by a state law requiring contiguous borders. We have worked with our legislatures, and this law was changed the next year. In 2019, fire chief services, Woodinville, and subsequent administrative integration. 2021, fire merger election process. Examined other fire department consolidations, and there are many of them. We now know that consolidation works because we've soon seen proof of it in real life. Merger election 2021. The Woodinville and North Shore Board and the firefighters local supported a full merger, and the ballot measure was placed on the April ballot. Unfortunately, there was falling out with labor, and we did learn some lessons. Next slide, please. Fire service consolidation is real. And there's a number of fire services in King County that have combined services and consolidation and regionalization. I've listed some for you, and you can see Valley Regional and Puget Sound, RFA. I won't go through them all, but it is a very big thing happening, and for all the reasons that we will further expound on here. And if anybody has any questions about that, I included the site there. You can click on the regional fire agencies on this, and it'll take you, and it'll give you every one of them. And then there's also, they'll give you some breakdowns of the advantages with them. So go to the next slide. Regionalization and consolidation, a proven tool to improve efficiencies and service provisions. Consistent training. Woodinville Bothell, North Shore, and Shoreline are members of the North King County Training Consortium. Special skills, we would have training, rescue, technical rescue, water rescue, and hazmat teams. Other items, we've also new electronics that are coming in. There's a lot of new specialized skills that we can have our teams move into. Enhanced opportunities for firefighters, especially assignments and promotional opportunities. Administrative expertise and specialization, more attractive hiring environment. We say that because we've noticed with North Shore Fire Department has had difficulty over the past several years hiring qualified candidates. Too often a potential hire withdraws to go with a larger agency. And some of the candidates have failed our background process. Next slide, please. We've heard the voters, advantages of consolidation versus merger. The biggest one, I think, is retention of local control. Keep the fire district and locally elected board commissioners. Keeps control of the level of service, keeps control of the tax rate, retain ownership of our assets, buildings, apparatus, and equipment, and our reserve funds. Next slide. Consolidated support, consolidation support. For the past decade, fire administration, the board, and labor have supported the concept of consolidation. Example, January 15th, 2020, at the North Shore Fire Department Board regular meeting, Local 2459 President Anders Hansen stated, "I want you to know that labor fully supports basically any option except for one. The option is to do nothing. It is, if you choose to do nothing, we absolutely do not support that. We have looked too much and seen too many efficiency. Consolidation is the way to go." Also, expanded capacities, efficiencies, fewer chief and administrative positions, more efficient operation, fewer administrative and support positions, and single IT point. Next slide, please. Cost savings are nothing, excuse me, cost savings are not the primary reason for consolidation, but it certainly helps. Proven cost savings. Actual evidence of savings was demonstrated over the last year consolidating administrative personnel in North Shore with Woodinville. Since January of this year, there's an actual savings of $205,200. And if with other further consolidations, it would be more. So savings can be returned to the taxpayers or used to enhance services, such as adding an aid car at prime hours. A number of additional services can be added, or a combination of the two. If we were fully consolidated, the savings would be much higher. Full integration of workforce saves overtime. No need to separate policies or procedures. One budget, one operational philosophy. Next slide. Mutual aid and borders. Services come from your local fire stations. Mutual aid ensures reliable, responsible response capability. Currently, all King County fire agencies utilize mutual aid agreements. Mutual aid continues with the contract for services. Only administrative services are consolidated. Your fire service response will not change. The level of service is the same or better. The same apparatus, the same number of personnel remain at the local stations. Next slide, please. Community outreach is important. We've heard the community message. What we have done, these presentations, community survey, FAQs, info on the North Shore site, a virtual open house, and consistently involving labor in our discussions. Next slide, please. And then this slide here is a process timeline that talks about all the things we've done and what we're working on in the process, where we're currently at. And tomorrow we have a special meeting to go over a number of items and continue on with the process. And this is updated on our website as the items occur. Last slide. Conclusion. We've done our homework. We believe you can trust us. And thank you for the time today. And I'd be more than willing to answer any questions.
Mayor Baker, you're muted.
Maybe we should hear from the union side, and then we can ask questions of you both.
Okay, thank you.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Jeremiah Ingersoll, I'm a lieutenant with the North Shore Fire Department. I've been here for about 20 years now, stationed over in Lake Forest Park at Station 57. And I appreciate the City Council and the Mayor allowing us to talk tonight. When the announcement came that North Shore Fire Department was looking to do a request for proposals for a contract for services with another agency, we are excited about that opportunity. When we looked at the options, we, the firefighters, thought the possibilities of Bothell, Kirkland, or Shoreline would be all good options as we share borders and work together on a daily basis. When we were told that the commissioners were seeking a proposal from Eastside Fire, we were taken back by this option. Eastside is a good fire department, but they're not going to be able to provide the same level of service as an agency whom we share borders with. North Shore firefighters, Local 2459, met with Eastside's union and fire chief, Chief Clark, and Shoreline's union and their fire chief, Chief Cowling. After those discussions, it was identified that Shoreline Fire is the best option, and here are some of the reasons why we feel that. Currently, we work closely every day with Shoreline firefighters and their paramedics. Our unions have a very close working relationship, and we plan on a near seamless transition. If you look over in Eastside and Woodinville currently, they're going through some woes as they transition together. They've actually had to call in a mediator to mediate between the two unions. Our firefighters already test into the Shoreline Paramedic Program. Over the past 17 years, we've probably had 8 or 9 of our employees promote into their program. Shoreline firefighters and paramedics work out of one of our stations already, Station 57 here in Lake Forest Park. Working in each other's jurisdictions on a daily basis, we have familiarity with their area and they have familiarity with ours. Knowledge of response routes and buildings provides a safer and more reliable fire department. Shoreline already provides all of North Shore Fire Department's emergency medical service training. Shoreline and North Shore are currently partners in the North King County Training Consortium. Eastside is not part of that. We utilize the same fireground emergency scene management system, known as best practices, and train on those practices continually with Shoreline and other North King County departments. This provides a safer fireground for the firefighters and provides an increase to service to the citizens. Eastside uses a completely different management system known as Blue Card. Shoreline Fire Department has a respected and well-balanced administrative staff. Partnering with Shoreline administrative staff, North Shore firefighters were able to provide COVID-19 vaccinations to over 20,000 people in our community. Shoreline would provide more aid cars in Lake Forest Park and Kenmore to help provide transport to our citizens instead of relying on AMR ambulances. Standardization of equipment carried on apparatus would also be there. With Shoreline sharing a border with us, we truly maintain local control. And I'd kind of like to go into a little bit about the local control part of this. As we, the union labor, we feel that local control of the fire department really has 3 facets. There's the boards, the administration, and the operations. In the Eastside model, they have a board of 8 directors who represent their 5 partners. Their 5 partners are the City of Issaquah, the City of North Bend, the City of Smamish, Fire District 10, which is Carnation, I believe, and Fire District 38, which I believe is May Valley. That Eastside board is the policy-making body of the agency. And since we are not a partner, we are going to be contracting for services. Our communities will not be represented on that board. I understand our Board of Fire Commissioners will still get to control tax rates and levels of service. but with Eastside, the fire chief, who is headquartered in Issaquah, will be the one who administers day-to-day operations. Therefore, it has the ability to change some of the levels of service on a daily basis as he sees fit. With Shoreline being a neighboring agency who already works in our communities, the control will truly stay local. So I guess in the end, what we're asking is we're looking for an outreach to our communities to try to keep your North Shore firefighters local, keep us in our area, in the areas that we're already working. We don't see advantages to going with Eastside. We see lots of service level increases though when we go with Shoreline. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
So, questions? Oh, yes, Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, a couple questions for Rick. You know, I appreciate you coming and speaking. There were two things that stood out to me. One is that you said that you have lessons learned from the experience recently with the election. And the other was that there would be continued increased efficiencies. In other words, reduced costs. You know, the purpose of doing this is either same service or better with reduced cost, or the same cost for better service. And, you know, well over a year ago, I and the other council members asked to see the data. We're still waiting. So that's one comment. And then I would like to hear what you think your lessons learned are. Because clearly we're still at odds with labor here.
I understand. And the data that you're asking for, we've published a bunch of stuff, but we can actually, we're going to have the two proposals in, and we'll actually have hard numbers listed, and we get them on the 15th. So as far as talking about actual dollars and cents, I did tell you that by just combining our admin staff for the last, since January 1, we've had a savings of $200,000, actual proven savings. So what we've done is put that into our prudent reserves, and the object of one of the things when I say that there's going to be a savings with the contractor services, that allows for a number of things. We can take and add services. The level of service is dictated by the contract. So, and what we're asking for from both applicants is that we want the same level of service or better and to be provided by this contract. And then with the savings, that allows us as citizens of Kenmore and Lake Forest Park to choose what we want to do with the savings. Do we want to get, and there's going to be a substantial savings to do this, a yearly savings. And a good example is Woodinville in their first year by their contract right now will save $1.5 million in admin and chief services. So, and that's guaranteed money. And so what do we do with that? I've had certain people say, well, that's $100 per household, but what about the service? That's what the citizens let the board know. We can take that additional money that we're saving and add to services. That's the local control we get by having a contract for services. We get the savings, and that's the business plan. We get the savings and we get local control, and then we can add services. A good example is Shoreline still already has, they have the Medic One services at Station 57. That's not going to change. Either way it goes. And we can add another aid car at Station 51 or wherever we want to, and we can add it for prime hours. And that, to add just an aid car, that's not just an aid car, it's the personnel that runs that. Whether we do a prime time or a full 24-hour shift, we can add those services. That's just one example. There's other services that can be added. So the business model is save the money and decide which way we want to do it. Do we want to add services, add another, engine? We don't know. Whatever our needs are, but we have that opportunity, and we retain the local control of that opportunity. And so I hope that answers that part of the question. I don't know if I've answered everything you had.
Just the lessons learned, given that it seems like they're still, at odds with labor.
Well, labor, and they'll speak for themselves, but that was one of the things that we did before. So we talked about merging with Woodinville, and they, up until about halfway through the process, we got it on the ballot, and then they, for their reasons, decided to go against it. We've talked with them constantly about this project, and invited them to participate in our meetings, and that we had to be careful to allow that. We went through our legal counsel, make sure it's not negotiating. We had to be careful with that, but we talked about they have the forum to speak at our meetings, and their affinity for shoreline is well known because of the reasons that they gave. They work there with them all the time, but as far as which way it goes, as far as services, there's still going to be the same number of firefighters at the stations, and I don't know how that's all how it'll work out, but the plan is to have labor involved all the way through this process. So hopefully that answers your question.
Councilmember O'Kane.
Apologies, my mouse got a little bit loose. And if you hear some squeaking on my end, I have a puppy who's chewing on a chew toy right now. So I'm just lightening it up a little bit here. But I do have a couple of questions. Just one thing that you spoke to quite clearly is that you've heard from the voters and you care about the voters. Given the timing and the exceptional circumstance of what's taken place with North Shore Fire, I'm curious, and I may have missed this, if there was consideration to requesting an extension of the ILA until after the election, so that our newly elected fire commissioners could fully participate in this vote and be elected from the people. I just was curious about that because I just find the quick move a bit unusual considering the timing so close to an election. And I know you gave some explanation there, but I still am curious if other options were explored, like an emergency extension of the current ILA for fire chief and fire marshal.
Well, there won't be an extension with the current fire chief, and because Woodinville, it's with Woodinville, and Woodinville will no longer exist. They'll become part of Eastside. So that is one of the reasons why they're canceling it. And that's all, but that's one of the things we've set aside is that by not taking filling the chiefs with a permanent position in the fire marshal services, that by doing this before the end of the year, we will save money, number one, but we'll set up the ability to have the new service, whichever one, Shoreline or Eastside, will provide the chief services, the fire marshal service, and the admin part of it. So we didn't fill those positions because of that. Okay.
And I am curious. It just seems unusual that given that there's just such a short period of time between now and the election, I find it curious that there's not a promotional temporary opportunity for someone within North Shore Fire until the election.
Well,
It just absolutely, there was absolutely no one qualified or no one, I didn't quite understand how for the short period, the 2-month period until the election, What was lacking?
It's with the promoting within the fire department, there's a conflict of interest because you would promote from within to a position to run operations and admin. And then when that position was filled, those two employees would go back into the union, and that's a conflict of interest. So it is not in good faith to do that for our citizens. And we could actually end up in court over it.
Okay. Yeah, I was just very curious about that. Just was an interesting thing to me. Thank you.
I guess labor has a different kind of perspective on that. We have promoted from within before, and we've had our battalion chiefs step into deputy chief roles for long terms, upwards of 6 months, and it worked out fine. I did send the commissioner chair and vice chair emails letting them know that we'd be willing to negotiate MOUs that would help ease any thought they have of some sort of conflict of interest. I don't see where it exists, but we've actually asked for that. And this also goes back to when you talked about the Prop 1 and saying that labor started opposing it after it was on the ballot measure. It was actually labor who asked that it not be put on the ballot because it wasn't ready. And so just wanted to clear some of that up.
I really appreciate hearing both sides. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, Councilmember Kugler.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. I just want to get some clarification on the process. So at this point, it sounds like requests have been requested from Eastside Fire and Shoreline. That's going to come in by September 15th. At that point, will the commission also be taking into consideration labor's, perspective in the rubric or selection process, or how will their perspective be taken into consideration?
Stakeholders will have a chance to voice at each one of our meetings that are coming up. They'll be open for comment and be part of the process. So we get it. We're going to have all our meetings are open and the discussions are fully online. So, but I just wanted to make sure that it's known that that's part of this process, is letting everybody know that we have the meetings coming up. We have a special meeting tomorrow discussing this. And as the proposals get in, we'll have a meeting after that. And then we're setting up meetings and everyone's public meeting, and there's public comment time. And we have a specific line item in our business for labor to participate. So, thank you for your question.
Councilmember File.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. So as I understand it, you're going to be without a fire chief at the end of October, right?
No, it'll be end of September, October 1st. And,
Okay.
and we've already made our decision which way we're going to go as far as the contract for services, and then we can do a interim ILA with that service, whichever
Right.
I would take.
In interim, you're doing a month-to-month contract for fire marshal services with the city of Bothell.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So, what's most important to our community is that they're going to have quality services continued. Part of quality services and insurances of that is how the people who are at the forefront of delivering those services ability to do so and work effectively with one another. So I do have concerns about a Eastside partnership when there is a trust and a trust climate culture and a good healthy systems of approach and collaboration with Shoreline, for example. I would I do have concerns that should there be a East Side collaboration, we lose some of the threshold for best supporting our community. And that would be a real serious loss. Given that the RFPs will not be back until September 15th, I would certainly hope to see a recommendation from both sides, as collective bargaining is normally a standard of the process. But I would like to see that come back to us. And I really appreciate that you're working to keep our Kenmore Council and community involved and up to date. This is certainly an improvement over the past, and I certainly would like to see that moving forward for our community. Thank you.
Just to make a statement there, whether we go with East Side or Shoreline, we will still collaborate with Shoreline. The Medic 1 still remains in the system at Station 57. That won't change. And with mutual agreement, mutual aid agreement, we'll still work with Shoreline no matter which way we go. The other statement I want to make is that all the firefighters in King County, fire agencies, are great agencies. It's a proven fact. And I don't think you can take anything away from any of the agencies. Different cultures here and there, but they're all great agencies. So anyway, thank you.
And it's clearly understood that regionalization is required to happen. I mean, the legislature passed that legislation, 2019? And so this has got to happen. It's just, we can't have a loss to our community, and we certainly don't want a loss to our hardworking union labor who's delivering the services, efforts to stay at the top of their skill and responding highly effectively the way they do already. So that being said, I just want to wrap that up with a bow. Mr. Jeremiah Ingersoll, did you have anything you'd like to share?
No, I was just going to, say, I think that Commissioner Webster and myself, we both agree that, part of us being here today is to get more involvement. We definitely want more of the community, the citizens, to come to the commissioner meetings, to speak up at those commissioner meetings, and just, give some direction, help give some direction. Like Commissioner Webster said, they're looking for all parties involved in the citizens, the city councils, the firefighters. Those are the parties. So hopefully people can hear it and show up to the commissioner meeting and let them know.
All right. Any other questions? Councilmember File, do you have another question? I see your hand still up.
I just need to lower that hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your gentleman coming out. Oh, Councilmember Kugler.
Sorry, I have one more question come to mind, and that is, Commissioner Webster, I wonder if you might be able to describe your perspective on the one point that Jeremiah brought up about the Eastside Board of Directors. Have you gone so far as to find out whether we would have representation on that board? The fact that it is filled with representatives of partner cities and that we don't have representation on there would definitely be a concern of mine.
And mine too. I haven't gotten into the final approach of it, but there is representation that in their system. I'm not versed on it enough to bring it to you, but I can answer that question. That will be one of our questions that we'll have at our open house, and we'll get that answered for you. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We really appreciate your coming out and informing us. All right. Next item on the agenda. Do you guys want to take a break for a few minutes since we've been going a little while? Let's take a break for 5. And we will be back here, let's say at Yeah, 9:11.
Ty, hi, nice to meet you. This is Anastasia, the city clerk. And Suzanne, are you with us too?
I'm here.
Hi, can you both hear me?
I can hear you.
Did we make a decision on who's going to progress the slides?
I can do it if you'd like. We can see if how that works with me sharing, or you can do it. Either way, it doesn't matter to me.
If you do it, you have more control and there's less lag. So let's go ahead and try practicing the screen share right now.
Okay.
It looks good. Let's try
See,
progressing.
yeah, it looks like it's not letting me progress. Let's see, here we go. Let's see if that'll do it. Yep, there we go.
Okay, very good. Yep, we see everything crystal clear.
Cool.
Okay, let's go ahead and stop the screen and looks like we're ready to roll.
Do you want me to stop sharing?
Yes, please.
Okay. Cool.
Well, nice
Hi,
to
Ty.
Ty, can you hear us okay? We want to test your mic as well. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Try your mic again, Ty. It looks like it's muted right now.
Ty, in the bottom left-hand corner, where there's
No, what happened was
Oh, you're here.
wasn't sure if my audio was coming through on the meeting, so I turned it down on the settings. So I had to go into settings and turn it down.
Oh, very good. Well, now we hear you, and now we hear you and see you. Very good. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Everybody back?
Yeah.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4. One more live face and we will go with it. All right. So, all right, let's get back to business here. Next item on the agenda is Indigenous Story Pole Contract and Presentation, presented by the city manager, Rob Carlinzy, the artist, Ty Juvenile, and the president of the Kenmore Heritage Society, Suzanne Greathouse. All right, Rob, it's yours.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you hear me?
You betcha.
All right. Really excited about this presentation tonight.
Me too.
As you know, Kenmore stands on the lands of the Coast Salish peoples, and in honor of their history, we propose that an Indigenous story pole be crafted by a member of a local tribe. The story pole will be located in Kenmore's town square next to the Hangar Community Building. Earlier this year, we conducted a request for proposals for a story pole, and we received a proposal from local Indigenous artist, Ty Juvenile. Throughout this process, we have received generous technical and informational assistance from the Kenmore Heritage Society. And tonight, Suzanne Greathouse, president of the Kenmore Heritage Society, and the artist Ty Juvenile are here to discuss the proposal. And with your permission, Mayor, I'll turn the time over to Suzanne Greathouse and Ty Juvenile.
Yes, please.
Hello, how's it going, council and everybody?
It's
My
going
name
great,
is-
but we got to get you a Kenmore t-shirt.
Yeah. No, I've been listening to your proceedings and your meeting today, and you know, there's a lot of really impactful things going on with this meeting today. You know, and getting everybody's time today to, you know, bring this project forward and put it into motion. This project, and Susan and I have been talking for about the better part of 3 or 4 years now, from concept to today. So it's been, you know, a rock we've been pushing up a hill for quite some time, and we're finally reaching the peak of that hill to start the process, you know. So I'm a Tulalip tribal member from Tulalip, Washington. That's about 30 minutes or 20 minutes north from y'all. And these are some of the slides that, you know, Susan is sharing. I submitted my, you know, RFQ or RFP, and it had my my resume on it. And this is just some of the work I've done. You know, I've grown up as a carver, as a professional carver for the last about 12 years now. My first paddle I did when I was about 11 years old, and I just kept coming back to it, you know. But my grandma told me that this was something you're gonna do, and I always thought it was kind of like, no, I didn't want to, you know, but she saw it, and here I am today, you know, doing works like all over Washington State. Like if you look at the Billy Frank Jr. low-income apartment building, it was a 3-foot spindle whorl, like a 2-foot mask, and then wall paintings or murals all over the building on separate floors and everything. And then another highlight of mine was being able to gift Bernie Sanders and meet him and talk with him for a moment when he was having his presidential run and everything. It was just amazing, you know. So, and then that's our youth center. Just you know, we like to make it known where you're at, you know. And when you walk into the buildings, you'll know you're in a tribal setting. And then my most recent project is the Edmonds Historical Museum. The panel is called Marsh Life, and it's a 3 feet tall by 6 feet wide, 4-inch thick panel. And on it, you can see, you know, what type of flora and fauna live in a marsh. And the whole project was supposed to represent and bring them the importance of marshes and marshlands and everything, because a lot of people just think of them as muck and, you know, nasty areas, but they play a important role in our ecosystem. And this panel kind of represents a time when our people were living in harmony with the ecosystem and not fighting the ecosystem. You know, like I heard in the meeting earlier, you guys are worrying about the concrete factory having some seepage into the local marshlands and stuff like that. You know, that has an effect on everybody, you know. And that's kind of what this panel represents. And then on the left and right side is a couple Salish guardians with a male salmon on the left and then a female salmon on the right with eggs inside of it. And then on top is a glass canopy with some frogs on it, because frogs are usually used as a indicator of health for, marshlands and ponds and other things like that. So yeah. Some of the ideas we're trying to come up with, and this is really what's important when it comes to designing any of these pieces. These are spiritual objects. I like to mention that as much as I can. We didn't see these things as artwork. We didn't label them as artwork. These were spiritual objects used for spiritual purposes, and a story pole is that type of object. It's used to convey a history or a place and time. And then, the work we do is we bless these things so the area they inhabit, can heal in a spiritual way and ward off bad spirit as well. So understanding the area that these spiritual objects are going to is really important. And the history of Kenmore is something that we need to show and prop up. History can be not as savory as we'd like it to be, but it's our history and we got to own it. There was tribes in the area, and after the Point Elliott Treaty, they got pushed out. Progress, manifest destiny. We got moved aside, and now it's the city of Kenmore. But this moment in time, we're at the point where we can heal. We can look at the past, acknowledge it, and say, how do we get back to, well, not even how do we get back to, how do we move forward for everyone, and this is a step towards that. So once everything is all approved, then I'll start sharing, poll ideas and concepts and everything, so we can work on the story of this story poll. Like when I was over at the what's the building over we met
The
at
hangar?
Susan?
The hangar?
Not the hangar.
At the
Edie's?
EERC?
Yeah,
EERC?
the EERC. There is a kokanee or type of salmon that is specific to Kenmore. It's its own species of salmon, and it's small, and it lives only in Kenmore. It's the only place it lives. And we learned that when we went into that tour of the new resort. Those are things that we put into these spiritual objects so we can try and bring awareness to it. It was thought they were extinct and they were gone. But after doing some work in the lake, they found that there was a healthy population, and it's something that needs to be propped up. So those stories are what we need to put in to these story polls. So yeah, I'm here for questions. This is kind of a new experience for me. I mean, I've done a lot of going to my local tribal boardroom, but I haven't done any town hall type of settings like this. So, if anybody has questions, I'm here to answer all questions.
Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Ty. Really appreciate that description and background. Ty, you and I have been back and forth talking about timeline and things like that. Can you talk about how long will it take for you to design, do the iterative process back and forth, and then actually when it will be done and be ready to install, and about how big will it be?
The width would probably be I'd say about 30 inches wide in diameter, up to 15 feet tall. It really depends on what is available. And with the pandemic and new logging laws, unfortunately, we're not allowed to harvest old growth in Washington State. So everything comes from Canada. Canada has been dealing with bark beetles, so they've been losing a lot of their logs. And then Alaska has a new law where you have to cut it into shingles or something before you can ship it down to Washington. They're kind of like, it almost seems like it's something against native artwork or something, because it can't be shipped the whole log. It has to be milled before we can receive it. And that's the biggest battle, is just finding the log. And I have a guy who's going to be helping me out. But once all that's received, I'd say, minimum a year, and that's if everything works out and everything runs smoothly. I'd say a year, because with these things, you don't really want to rush them, and there's certain things that I try to explain to people. When we're doing these things, we do it with the right heart and mind, and it sounds, cliche, but it really has an effect on what you're doing. Sometimes if you have a bad or angry or a bad mind, like I get cuts. Accidents happen, when you're working and you're trying to rush, or you have something else in your mind. I've had accidents, like I've dropped a knife in my foot through my shoe, and I had to get like 5 stitches. And I was angry that day. And another day I was angry, I cut through my thumb on my fingernail, had to get like 6 stitches on there. So a lot of times I like to say my work is dictated by something else. Like if I have a bad feeling for the day and, I'm looking at my tools and I go, I don't know. I'm not working day by day, it's something else, and that's why I say the best scenario, a year, with everything working fine, a year. But worst case scenario, 2 years, and that's if logs aren't available. And that's really what it comes down to, is acquiring a log. From there, I can build my timeline off of acquisition of materials, so that's what it really comes down to, is once I find a log, then I can build my timeline on after that. And then once we get, the design figured out, usually the way I like to work is make the design on paper, make a scaled model, so something that's like a 10th scale, and then move to full scale. The reason you go scaled version is so you can try things, and say on paper you put the hands being 2 feet and you put it on the log and they look a little bit too small. You can make that adjustment when you go on to the full scale model, so yeah.
I got to tell you, I'm very, very excited about this. I think when the city manager was hired a number of years ago, one of the first things I talked to him about was a story pole. A story pole. I am so happy to see this finally coming around. And I'm so impressed with some of the things I've seen from you. So
thank you.
This is very, very exciting. Will you do any of the carving on site?
If that's something we want to talk about, yeah. I mean, there's certain things that I don't finish until it's at the location. Like, for instance, on the panel, there's eyes on certain figures, and usually eyes are the last thing that's carved into a pole. The way we look at it is it's like it's waking up,
Yeah.
and you don't want to wake it up until it's all dressed, I guess you could say, or until it looks its best,
Yes.
you know, because you're bringing it to life once you stand it up.
Yep.
So once you stand it up and, you know, carve the eyes in before you stand it up, you want it to look its best before you know, stand it up. We're honoring this spirit, you know. I like to say that, you know, everything has a siom or spirit. The way I tell kids is you cut a tree, it bleeds sap, you know. It's when you think about it in simple terms, they eat, you know, they grow and they live and die just like us, you know. They just have a different language, you know.
I know the public would really be excited about seeing part of this take shape, or certainly the eyes opening for the first time. Councilmember File.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. You know, it seems like it's been forever, or a tootie to ha, like a long time ago that this has been first mentioned. And so this is so very exciting for our community, and we are so very honored you're doing this for our community. We have at our Twahadis Park, we're going to be losing some of our trees there for the park. You mentioned that you make a smaller scale first before making larger scale. Is it possible to use one of these trees for such a purpose?
Possibly. It kind of depends on what type of tree it is and the age of the tree too. Let me just grab a piece of wood. So if you can see the wood grain, right?
Yes.
This wood grain, we want it as tight as possible, like, so you don't see the gaps. And the reason is when it's wide, you can feel that. You can't sand it down. You can't get the detail because it flakes off. You can see it, like some of these spots, it's chipped and flaked off. So it just depends on the species of tree and the age of the tree. Like if it's red alder, I mean, I would love to use some red alder, but red alder is usually used for masks and bowls and utensils, where a cedar tree would be used for story poles, house posts, welcome figures, canoes, you know. So there's variables, you know, but no, if there's a nice tree, I'll definitely look at it, you know.
Thank you. And for our community, not only are you amazing, I highly respected artist, but you're also an amazing storyteller as well. I don't know if maybe down the road we would be so fortunate and so lucky to have you present a story to us, but I would certainly welcome it. So thank you.
Yeah, no. Now that you mention it, it'd be nice to, before it's lifted up, you know, tell the stories of what everything means. You know,
Oh,
have a
that's
session
lovely.
where, just depending on how the world is, you know, if it's a Zoom meeting, it's a Zoom meeting, you know, but just being able to do it, that'd be awesome. I would love to.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else?
Melanie?
Oh, yes, Councilmember O'Kane.
Keep losing my mouse. Thank you for calling on me. I just really want to express gratitude to everyone that's been involved with this project. Suzanne, your commitment to bringing this to the city of Kenmore the close work that I have heard about what you've been doing on this project really needs to be acknowledged. So I want to thank you for that. And Ty,
Thank you.
I really, what I want to share is your explanation of the heart and spirit that goes into a story pole is incredibly meaningful, and it feels healing. And I really think it's a true blessing to have you doing this work for our community. And thank you. I feel it.
Yeah, no, thank you all. You know, me and other carvers, we talk about these things all the time, and we're at a point where we're rewriting our history over again, and we're in control of our culture again. You know, we're the generation where we're living the way we used to, and we're making things that we used to, you know, and we're finally, I think, at that generation where, you know, our ancestors said, you know, we're going to be back. We're finally here, you know, we're making these decisions. We're, you know, putting up spiritual objects as we used to, you know, in the old way. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
And again, I can't thank, you know, Susan and Rob enough. And like I mentioned before, this was all an idea. And I remember it started out as something for the boat launch or the boat ramp. And then it turned into this. And then for a moment it went dark, and then came back to here we are.
I just want to share, this is the most exciting thing that's happening in Kenmore in art and for our community. Just hearing this story, it's really beautiful. And I just want to call attention to the way you spoke about the spiritual nature of the story pole, really so meaningful to me and so many in our community. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you all.
So Ty is also going to be doing some art out at the EERC. And so we've been working with them. The Heritage Society donated some funds for their outside learning area. And Ty and I met with them, gosh, it's been a couple weeks now, I guess, to look at the space and kind of get a sense of it. And I'm really looking forward to that project as well. I think that will be the first of many collaborations out there with those folks in Ty.
Yeah, and with that, I'm thinking probably something metal, like a metal spindle whorl, because it, you know, it's something you don't have to really worry about, you know, and the area that it's at, you know, it's high traffic, families and everything. So it's something you don't really have to, once it's up, unless somebody really wants to inflict damage, you know, it can take some damage, you know, so, and it'll last much longer than some wood and the elements. So yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions? Councilmember File?
I just have one question about a piece of art that could possibly block the artwork that's in place. There's a large art chair, for example. We might consider moving that chair to a little bit better location so that the sight of the pole is uninterrupted.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking about a different spot for it?
Oh no, not a different spot for the pole. There is a
like a art
very
committee.
large. Oh,
there's a
well,
large
there's a-
blue chair.
Exactly.
Do you remember seeing that, Ty, when we
Yeah.
were out there? Yeah. So I think
Okay.
she's suggesting that maybe have a different home to honor your piece.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that chair is made to move, so.
that works, just to have an unobstructed view of the pole. I think that would be nice. And we wouldn't want to hide any of that beauty, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's your guys' call, you know. I don't know if people would object to that. You know, I feel like with your community being as tight-knit as it seems from just listening to the meetings, there will probably be some minor objections, but you know.
No, city staff is certainly capable of handling this. This is not something for council to be involved in.
Yeah.
I'm sure you and the city can handle it. So
no, it's just one of those things where whatever you do, there's always going to be somebody who isn't happy, you know. So yeah, I'm more than happy with that.
Very good. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And like you've gathered, we're all very, very excited about this. And we're so happy that you're talking with the city. And I'm sure that the city will do what it can do to make the dreams finally come through. So, Mr. City Manager, thank you.
And so there's a motion in your agenda bill to approve.
To authorize the city manager to, let me get to this here, business agenda B. Bear with me a second. Yep, so I'm going to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with Thai Juvenile to create an Indigenous-based story pole sculpture at the town square in an amount not to exceed $72,000 plus Washington state sales tax and substantially in the form attached Heather 2. Is there a motion?
So moved, Councilmember File.
Second, Councilmember O'Kane.
We got Councilmember Marshall in there, who was pretty quick. Nope, we'll leave it at Councilmember File and O'Kane. So if there's no further discussion, motion in front of us is to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract. As stated, will the clerk please take the roll?
Mayor Baker?
Aye.
Councilmember Kugler?
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik?
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yes.
Councilmember File?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Kane?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Fabulous.
OCM, yes, thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is.
And before you guys, you know,
Yeah,
before
sure.
I get off,
Sure, Ty, go ahead.
You know, I want to say thank you again. Couldn't say thank you enough. I wish we were in person because I'm a more in-person type of person. And I look forward to this project, you know, and I'll be talking to everybody soon, and I'll probably be out there a few times to try and get some history and more in-depth information on maybe some of the families that used to reside there. And yeah, no, it's going to come along.
Let us know and we'll be happy to come out there too.
All right.
Like you, I much more want to meet face to face.
Yeah.
It means more than this, but right now, because of COVID, because of state law, we're limited to this. So, but anyway, things change. It will get better.
It will. It will.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right.
All
Thank
right. Next item on the agenda is Walkways and Waterways Project Update presented by the Community Development Director, Ms. Bent, and Project Manager, Maureen Colazazi. I know I just mess up your name something terrible, and I'm really sorry.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Anyway, you're on, ladies.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. So this is an update item. There is no council action anticipated for this agenda item. Maureen is the project manager for the 2 remaining Walkways and Waterways projects, and she did a great job of giving you a lot of information in the agenda bill. So we do not intend to go in detail over that information. We will give you an overview of both projects, probably beginning with Log Boom Park. As you know, that project is under construction. And for Squires Landing Park, Maureen will give you an overview of where we are on the budget, where we are with permitting and the construction schedule, and highlight a few of the project details. And we want to leave sufficient time for council questions. So I would now like to turn it over to Maureen to give you an update on both of those projects.
Thank you, Debbie. Hello, and good evening. As Debbie mentioned, I'll start off with Log Boom Park, and it's going to be a very short little paragraph I'm going to read, and then we'll dive into Squires, which is a little more elaborate. Log Boom Park, as you know, is under construction. We began construction the week of July 26th. Road Construction Northwest is our contractor. They mobilized to the site and they erected the construction fencing to close the park for construction. Just so you know, postcards were sent to local residents, that's nearby residents. A press release was published, signs were posted at the park, and our website is updated with current information. Work continues, and you will see progress by walking the Burke-Gilman Trail and viewing down into the park. It's really lovely. You should definitely take advantage of that. Road construction's goal is to build the park project kind of from the west to the east and move out of the project site. And they've been doing a great job of that. And many of you, if you're looking at your weekly updates, you'll be seeing the progress photos as well of that work. They anticipate completion sometime in the spring of 2020. And the in-water work that would build the actual beach, in-water beach work will be done this fall and into the winter, starting in November. And the project's anticipated to be completed in the spring. More details about the schedule and the completion of the project wouldn't be known until the beginning of the year. Now for Squires Landing Ta'awadis Park, waterfront access and waterfront and natural open space access project update. I'm not sure, I'm going to have to ask the city clerk if I can share screen or not.
You do have that capability. Go ahead.
Okay, let me. Does that work? Do you see? Okay, share. Okay. Do you see? I guess I might have to shrink the size a bit. Can you see that? Yes. Okay, many of you may have seen this exhibit, this really nice infographic. Wanted to share it with you. These are kind of the details of what we're able to accomplish in this project from an environmental perspective. It's pretty breathtaking. The other thing to remember about this project is we went through a process with the Recreation and Conservation Office because we are building 1.5 acres of land that was originally in a deed restricted area, that we're adding 4.8 acres of land in Swamp Creek, just north of the project on 192nd, that's adding to all this additional work that we're doing. So when we say 4.5 acres of wildlife habitat will be enhanced, then you add 4.8 acres of land that we're actually adding to the park system for natural open space. That's quite, I think, significant. And to keep this big picture in mind when you think about a 1.5 acre park impact, that's, I think, very, very significant. So I'm going to stop sharing that so that I can go back to my presentation. And I basically went through the bulk of what this project is. You know, we're preserving and enhancing ecological functions of that 4.5 acres, the buffers, we're creating wetland, we're enhancing upland, We're doing these really creative, what they call habitat benches inside Swamp Creek. And again, we're adding that 4.8 acres in Swamp Creek. It's quite honorable, I think, something to keep in mind when you look at the details of this project. Park improvements were designed to avoid and minimize impacts to sensitive areas and habitat, or locate close to the existing man-made lagoon to avoid impacts to Swamp Creek and the Smamish River. For example, the parking lot was located in the northwest corner of the property outside of the wetland buffer. That means it's not in a critical area, so there aren't impacts to critical wetlands or its buffer when we designed it in that location. And we kept it out of where there are more significant tree dominant areas in the western portion of the park. So that was really early design work that was done in 2015-16 when we were in the early stages of concept development. And it was very forward thinking to make sure that we're keeping our, entry and parking area outside of impact. The hand carry floats and the gangways were located within the man-made lagoon, again, to avoid the impacts of being directly on the Smamish River. And even though many impacts were avoided or minimized through the project design refinements through the last 4 years, there will be impacts to critical areas. However, the project impacts will be fully mitigated through enhancement of the existing wetlands and buffers, creation of wetlands, as I've mentioned, the habitat benches along Swamp Creek, shoreline restoration along the man-made lagoon. We're even reusing some of our healthy felled trees as logs. They call them habitat logs. We're doing that at Log Boom as well. And what they call large woody debris in Swamp Creek, which is habitat for fisheries. Staff has recently received some questions from the public, as well as you, asking questions about the selection of the parking lot surfacing materials. The parking lot surface was reviewed between 30 and 60%, designed for the ability to implement low impact development components into the project, including pervious pavement options, but it was found unfeasible due to the surface, due to the fact that there would not be enough room in the sub-base area due to the high water table and soils that do not filtrate, so that they're pore saturating soils. So they're like clay or glacial till as an example. The parking lot also needs to support vehicle loads, including emergency vehicles. An asphalt pavement material was selected versus other materials such as gravel, concrete, or other paving options, as asphalt is 50% less expensive to construct and maintain and requires less long-term maintenance. Other materials are considered impervious. All materials, are considered impervious and would need to be documented in the permitting process, which we have. All pollution generating surfaces, that's all materials that we would be considering for the parking lot surface, fall into this category because vehicles are generating that pollution. They are all being collected and treated on site per the state stormwater manual requirements. This is critical. The Department of Ecology will not allow us to deviate from this, and I don't think any of us would disagree. After 4 years of consultation, permit applications, responses to viewer comments, staff has received all necessary permits and approvals, including our SEPA mitigated determination of non-significance, State Department of Archaeological and Historic Preservation review, the Army Corps of Engineer Section 106 Cultural Resources review and approval. A final mitigation plan has been reviewed by required regulatory agencies prior to permit issuance. This plan includes details of the habitat benches, removal of invasive species, along with descriptions of other required mitigation, restoration, and environmental enhancement measures. Permit conditions require compliance with the mitigation plan, including a 10-year monitoring, maintenance, and stewardship period to ensure success. A habitat conservation and stewardship plan is supplementing the mitigation plan, and it's under development, and we're expecting it'll be complete this winter so that we can ensure ongoing maintenance and stewardship during the following 10 years. This plan will also outline recommendations and implementation measures for continued public education and environmental stewardship. Bid advertisement is anticipated for early mid-October, and with this schedule, I would anticipate contract award and notice to proceed being issued in December and construction starting in January. We received all our permits as of this week, so it is exciting. And I've been working on this project, and many other people in the city have been working on this project even prior to my arrival. So I've been here 4+ years, and these ideas and concepts for how this project would come together have been in place for over 5 to 7 years. So altogether, these two projects are consistent with the goals of the Shoreline Management Act's Shoreline Master Programs guidelines to utilize the shorelines and its waters they encompass for public access and recreation. Quoting RCW 90.58.020, the public's opportunity to enjoy the physical and aesthetic qualities of natural shorelines of the state shall be preserved to the greatest extent feasible, consistent with the overall best interest of the state and the people generally. Alterations of the natural conditions of the shorelines of the state in those limited instances, when authorized, shall be given priority for development that will provide an opportunity for substantial numbers of people to enjoy the shorelines of the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maureen. You cleared up a lot of misconceptions that are floating around out there, and I certainly appreciate your report. Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Shrubnik.
Just a couple of small ones. Thank you, Maureen. That was an excellent presentation. I'm super excited and about the public access to both of these parks and how it'll be enhanced. It's something that I've advocated for multiple decades. So on the Charlottesville Park side, can you say a little bit about where the waterfront activities, the programs will store their boats, and similarly where or if there'll be public boat storage? So that's one question. And then the other question, and I think I had asked this by email, but I don't recall a response, was around if any of the regulatory bodies had, kind of called out specific species that would be impacted and how that's being mitigated. So those are the main questions.
Well, to answer your question, there is right at the entrance of the park, there is a caged or a fenced storage area for, we wanted to be able to provide Kenmore Waterfront Activity Center an opportunity to have the ability to store their particular boats that they would be using for recreation for the community in a place that's not on the other side of the lagoon, because right now that's where their current storage is. So that fenced-in area is intended for them and their use now and into the future to store their boats to serve the community. We do not have currently any program or anything to deal with public boat storage, and that is something that would have to be discussed as the Kenmore Waterfront Activity Center enters into a future contract with the city. It has to be reviewed by the legal department, because right now we didn't have that opportunity to review it at that level.
Gotcha. And anything on the species question? Species question.
All wildlife will have a a potential short-term impact while under construction. However, our permits have been set in place with the mitigation that we are providing to provide, basically 4.5 acres of habitat. That's what the whole goal of the restoration work is about, is providing that permanent native vegetation habitat for wildlife. And that's how we mitigated for that minor disturbance during construction.
Thanks, beautiful.
Any other questions? Councilmember File.
Thank you, Mayor Baker, and thank you, Maureen. I really appreciate both your hard work and efforts on this, and yours as well, Ms. Debbie Bent. One of the things I really like about the Walkways and Waterways project that you presented is the reuse of logs and whatnot for that project. And I certainly would like to see that come along with Twahahidis Park as well. But I do have a little bit of a pause with this parking lot issue. And I understand the issues of the, possibly this not so great soil, clay-like soil, and the need to increase gravel height to put in a lot. I thought we gave some direction to go with something other than asphalt. It's really hard to see, a tar-based product close to the shoreline, even if it's near the street. And I really struggle with how does this choice work with our goals to be salmon safe? Because if we can't put a vault in and we can't use a pervious product to help filter stormwater and street water runoff, then we are going to be impacting salmon. Mrs. Jennifer McTire, who is an eco-toxicologist, is very prominent on these issues and explains these issues pretty broadly and very specifically for our region really well. So I'm concerned, is there some sort of filtration you're going to do around, around the lot, like layered chips and compost?
I'm happy to answer that question if you give me a moment.
Thank you. I just don't see how it was going to work, that, to stay both salmon safe and have a, protected sheeted water runoff kind of lot.
So let me explain that underneath the parking lot.
Before you do, let me just, Councilmember, answer your first question, which was you said that council had given direction to do an alternative material, and there has not been specific council direction on that, specific design detail. So that's the answer to your first question. In answer to the second question, you can only imagine the amount of permits and regulations that we have to comply with. And surface water requirements are one of them. And those are the city's regulations. The Department of Ecology reviews those, and other agencies review for impact. So we have complied with all those regulations in terms of the materials that are being used and the surface water requirements in terms of treatment. That's the short answer, and Maureen may be able to fill in some additional details on the design.
Yes, thank you very much, Debbie. And she is accurate in that the Department of Ecology, we have to go and receive a stormwater permit, which we did a public notice for. The community has an opportunity to review our design. It was on our website, and it was published in the newspaper. And it basically, we have to show how we're going to, deal with water that's been dealt with generating pollutions, and we have to collect it and we have to treat it, and we are doing that. that occurs underneath the parking lot. And so when I'm trying to explain to you that when I in my report, when I talked about that the water table is high and we have different soils there, that was in reference to the permeable materials that process has to rely on infiltration as opposed to collection and treatment. So when we're using anything like concrete or asphalt surfaces or gravel or any other materials that are these pavement type materials that, you know, collect these, any materials we would put in that parking lot, you have to collect it. And then underneath we have to treat it. So we treat it in like catch basins that have a way in which you go through and the water sits and it filtrates through and then it gets collected by us. We remove the bad stuff out of those catch basins. That's part of our maintenance requirements. And in terms of the impervious surface materials, you are not needing to do that level of treatment because you're relying on the soils to, you know, deal with that pollution. And so that's how that infiltration system works. But we can't do it there because one, the soils aren't going to take that in from like that moisture in because they're clays and they're glacial till materials that won't receive it. And also when you have the high water table basically prohibits any of those things occurring because the water's too high. So you can't have water infiltrate because you would basically be creating a parking lot which would turn into a pond because it all would come out of those little, because, you know, permeable pavement has holes in it, just like our parking lot at our city hall. It is permeable pavement, but it has the ability to, you know, infiltrate. And if you have those two conditions, you can't infiltrate and then the water floods. So you wouldn't be able to accomplish that goal of treatment with that particular type of system. And so that's why you have to go to a more traditional system, which is almost in every parking lot that you go to, where you collect the water, you treat the water, then it gets piped or in an open channel to somewhere where it discharges. And it discharges either into our water system, or in this case, by our requirements through our permit, it discharges by dissipating into the lagoon, which is connected to the waters of the state, which is a requirement of the Stormwater Manual.
I appreciate that. And, you know, had there been a salmon safe reference in our materials tonight, I think it would be helpful for the community to bring us along with that.
We're happy to share more how we're doing the right thing to keep salmon safe. The whole project is all around the concept of keeping salmon safe. Everything that we're doing with the habitat benches and everything is all for salmon habitat.
Right. Thank you very much.
Marshall.
Councilmember Marshall.
So thank you for that awesome explanation. And I just got to get it into my head then. So it looks like we are like treating or are going to treat, say, runoff from cars or oil from cars that goes into the parking lot onto that asphalt. It's going to go into some kind of little basin that goes under the parking lot and then is treated to
Correct.
make it foreseeably safer or hopefully safer than when it came in there. And we have
yes, and we're required to by permit to do
and
that.
that's like a more commonplace standard, or it's a parking lot standard maybe for water discharge using a lot of places too.
Yes, you have to treat the pollutants which are coming off of vehicles. So it has nothing to do with the material that the vehicles are on. It has to do with the vehicle bringing oils and other things to the environment. And so you have to be able to collect them and remove them from the downstream water source. And that's what we are required to do by permit.
And any sense, to put it real easy, just in real layman's terms, like how much of that bad stuff or the oil gets neutralized before it goes in there, or what effect does it have? Thank you.
Well, it goes through a process where, you know, you have to basically, it goes to the bottom of a basin and then it sits there, and then we go in and we pull it out. And so it doesn't go to waters of the state because the clean water comes out from that system and then goes through a long process before it hits the waters of the state. It has to go through a pipe all the way around the park to the lagoon. And before it hits the lagoon, we go through what's called a disbursement channel, which is actually treated by natural plants. That's also, you know, part of water treatment, right? Is that it will come out of a weir and it will go through all this native habitat before it actually hits the waters of the state naturally.
Isn't this all part of the NPDES regs, the natural pollution and discharge regulations? Yeah, I thought so. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the update. All right. Next item on the agenda, Rhododendron Park Boathouse fundraising and programming update presented by Community Development Director Debbie Benton, Parks Project Manager Rob Sayre McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a lot to say other to introduce Rob as the project manager. And again, this is an update, and we are lucky to have the boathouse has been constructed, and now programming is taking place in the boathouse. It's a community boathouse to serve the entire community. So the update this evening is focusing on an update on fundraising to raise the budget shortfall and to also give you an update on programming. And so we've got some special guests here tonight to give a presentation, but I'll now turn it over to Rob Sayre McCoy to do those introductions. Thank you. I see Rob is on the call. I don't hear him.
Hi, sorry, my whole household lost internet for a couple minutes.
I was introducing the other Rob K. I was trying to introduce Rob S, who I see. Oh, I see he's there, but he's not really there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. It worked in the dry run today. Of course, it doesn't work now. Apologies. Anyways, thank you for the introduction, Debbie. And I'm sorry, my camera is not currently working, so I'm not able to appear on video. I'm sorry for that. I don't have too much to add to what Debbie said. Just a brief recap that the Boathouse has a fundraising gap of approximately $500,000 that is due to be fundraised by the fundraising committee. $340,000 of those dollars were due to the apparent low bid coming in higher than the engineer's estimate back when the project went out to bid. And the council direction at the time was to move forward with the project, understanding that the strategic ops would essentially front the money for that project and it would be paid back by the fundraising committee later. There have been a few overages, namely construction overages, additional staff time, and unforeseen increased utility costs that have caused that number to rise to about $500,000. And so I'm going to turn things over to a combination of the Kenmore Rowing Club and the George Pocock Rowing Foundation and the fundraising committee to talk a little bit about what the plan is to fundraise that money, as well as kind of what the current programming going on at that boathouse is going to be. So I think first up is going to be Mr. Matt Lacey.
All right, hello everybody. I can only appreciate your ability to go ahead and capture a lot of detail very late into the evening, so we'll try to be quick as we get this update out to you, but of course answer any questions that you might have. I'm going to share my screen. We've got a brief presentation to get here in front of you. to help us move along and stay focused. For the night, the first is just some introductions. There's some new faces in the council that I have not met before, so I just want to say hello. My name is Matt Lacey. I've been involved with the Boathouse project from its inception to now, and I'm currently serving on the board of the Kenmore Rowing Club. And so I'm just here to provide an update on the collaborative and community effort to close that funding gap. And I just wanted to introduce the other folks that are here representing the community of participants that are using the boathouse or helping us run it. And so on that note, from the George Pocock Rowing Foundation, there's President Jen Gibbons, the Executive Director, and Nell Aiello, their Development and Communications Director. I didn't know he'd be joining us, but their Director of Rowing Operations, Patrick McGovern, is also here. We do not have a representative from the school district at this point, but we do have Bruce Scouria representing, I mean, he's our point of contact for the district as it relates to the fundraising effort. And then I also have Susanna Bona, the Executive Director from the Kenmore Rowing Club here. So hopefully we can answer any questions that council might have as it relates to our community fundraising goal, especially since we do have some new community members in there. Rob provided a brief history, but it's going to be helpful to understand where we are now, to take a quick look at where we were as of March 2020. We did have that goal of $340,000. We had collected a pledge of 50, giving us a target to raise of $290,000. And that would again be on a goal that all of the community participants with the support and some guidance from the George Pocock Rowing Foundation are going to tackle. At that point in time, this was leading up to COVID, the size of the community was about 151 active athletes, adults, and students from North Shore School District programs. And the engagement level was very high. Of course, everybody was very excited about the new boathouse. The support systems for a community fundraising event were in place with booster clubs from the school districts. Had actually been formed, and the parents were aware of this gap in funding that we were trying to close. And of course, also present was this need, and the sense of urgency was very, very clear, you know, again in March of 2020. But of course, well, we got our group came together in March of 2020. We actually had 40 individuals gather at the library, and we had leadership present from the foundation, the Pocock Foundation, from the Kenmore Rowing Club at that time. We had the boosters present, Kenmore Rowing Club, and we actually were able to engage and develop a strategy over 18 months with a goal of closing that $290,000 gap in very much a, how would you put it, in a fairly straightforward way as a capital fundraising effort, focusing on major donors, grants, and then community and grassroots involvement. But of course, that was March of 2020. And right after we met, the pandemic hit. And the impact of COVID on the community participation in Kenmore for the rowing community was particularly hard. Between the North Shore School District and the Kenmore Rowing Club, participation dropped to almost zero. Of course, participation is based on the ability to participate, and rowing programs really took a knee and had to stop being involved for the most part during the initial stages of that pandemic. Also, during that time, the leadership teams from both Kenmore and the Pocock Foundation had turnover. For the Kenmore Rowing Club, we experienced almost a full turnover in the board of directors and the staff. And for the Pocock Foundation, the leadership team there for development and administration also went through a turnover. And so when the boathouse was completed on June 18th, it was completed, but we really did not have the large and robust rowing population at that point to come charging through the doors. The school district teams had been practically decimated. over that time. And the Kenmore Rowing Club was trying to go ahead and get Learn to Row programs started, but of course, without the boathouse up until that point, the efforts were fairly lean. And of course, during that time, as Rob also just covered, the funding gap as far as the goal of $290,000 almost doubled to over $500,000. And so, to be very clear, just from if we take a look in March and where we were, our expectations have doubled from that point in time over the course of the last year, year and a half, while our capacity has unfortunately been greatly diminished. And so if I just want to go ahead and make sure the council, being just very, very clear, we still think there is a high likelihood of this goal being achieved, the new goal, but we're going to need some more time to build back to where we were in March. We're not just starting from zero and resetting to a year ago, because all of the engagement that a successful fundraising effort will depend on is dependent on participation. And in September, a whole bunch of brand new kids came walking into that boathouse door for the very first time, and they have yet to be on the water. Our members, probably collectively, I don't think we have one member at the Kenmore Rowing Club with more than 2 years of rowing experience. And it's all of those experiences on the water that's going to fuel engagement in the fundraising effort. And we need to build back up to where we were in March of 2020. And so moving forward from now, the committee, our operating agreement was just signed, I believe, in August. Maybe I think July actually, and we were able to get into the building. Our the roles were just clarified as it relates to our fundraising work, and we just got together again in September to go ahead and then reinvigorate the effort. But we're going to need to be focusing on rebuilding awareness and engagement, making sure that the school district and the parents have some time to rebuild those booster clubs and that parent involvement in this activity. And we also need to incorporate some new strategies because COVID, it's very possible there are relief programs and grant programs that are going to help us close that gap as well. And so we're looking at a timeline that's going to stretch out, not at 18 months, but we're looking most likely at 5 years to stretch it out. And that's probably not some great news to the council, but COVID really took the rowing community here down to its knees. And so moving forward, I'd like to pass over the presentation to Nell Aiello, who's working with the Pocock Foundation in their development and communications on where we go next.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Nell Aiello. I am the Director of Communications and Development at the George Pocock Rowing Foundation. I'm actually going to talk about the fundraising plan, but first I'm going to introduce our Executive Director, and she's going to talk about the mission and vision just briefly. In the interest of time, I know everyone's ready for bed, so I'm going to hand it to her for a moment, and then I will be back to talk about the fundraising plan. So Jen Gibbons, you have the microphone.
Great, good evening. I'm sure you all know about the GPRF, so I'll just quickly highlight and share our work in case you don't, or if you would just like to be in the know of the great work of the foundation. We've been around for 36 years with this sole focus of really growing and developing the sport. And so the Kenmore Boathouse has been an initiative for our organization for many years. As Matt shared, we've had a variety of changes, and over the last year, in fact, I'm just celebrating a year with the foundation, so I'm brand new as well. Nell is even newer than I am. So we are new to the foundation and starting to rebuild our efforts as an organization and learning how it is we can support this fundraising effort and goal. Nell will talk specifically about the strategies that we aim to have in raising those funds, but to give a sense of sort of how we envision our role with the effort is that our organization knows rowing, it knows fundraising, and it can lend expertise to this community in being able to raise these funds. So we're hoping to find great partners within the community. Perhaps you know some individuals or some corporations that are interested in supporting programs for young people. And Nell would be the person to put them in touch with. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to her and we'll go from there.
Great, thank you. All right, so I think both Jen and Matt mentioned that our role with the GPRF is to really help the Kenmore rowing community organize their fundraising so it's sustainable for all of us involved. We're providing a year of assistance to really get the Kenmore Boathouse community up and running with structures in place for their fundraising and for the goals to meet the deficit we're at right now. So we're really here to provide strategy and expertise. And we're very much committed to the next 12 months to set this organization up. And as Matt mentioned, this is really a 5-year plan for fundraising. So the 2021 and beyond fundraising plan will focus very much on building relationships and stewarding the community to foster support. And those efforts will include individual giving, so identifying major donors and hopefully corporations who will be interested in giving to this wonderful boathouse. Community engagement events, those are always wonderful to bring people together so that they feel part of this boathouse community and therefore it will really resonate with them. Grants, we're going to be working to identify and apply for grants we'll be eligible for in the Kenmore area and that community. And then working with the school district. I know that it's kind of come to a halt with COVID the last 18 plus months, but we're certainly going to get that back up and running with the PTA and the booster clubs and drive awareness and engagement from the parents and the community there. And then finally with membership and rental dues. So we have a variety of ways that we're planning to close that fundraising gap over the next 5 years. And we'll be there to help support over the next year or so to see what we can do to strategize and come up with those structures. So we very much have a plan. We don't necessarily know all of the ingredients just yet of that plan, but we do know the overall strategy that we're planning for. And we know that Kenmore is a very vibrant community, so we feel optimistic. All right, any questions? Hope you guys could hear me because that would be really a bummer if you couldn't. Okay, thanks. Thanks for the thumbs up.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes, thanks. We're going to hear from Patrick shortly about community usage of the boathouse.
Great segue. Thank you. Yeah. Good evening.
Okay,
everyone.
and I'm sorry. So just right before I move on to that, I just want to thank everybody for that awesome presentation. And then just to plant the seed, I know that you'd agree that swimming and learning how to swim is fundamental to your mission and your ongoing mission way in the future. I just ask that you perhaps follow with some interest Kenmore's efforts in concert with this to try and explore options for a public pool so all our kids can learn how to swim. Thank you.
Certain, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it's obviously a key component to
Before
water
you get
safety there.
started, hold on, Pat, Councilmember File.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. You know, the timing of all this has been, of course, very challenging. And I absolutely can see where the initial stages of COVID threw a curveball here and there and with reorganization. But it looks like you had 18 months to formulate a plan, and you initially raised that 50K. But I don't know that, you know, and just in accordance to legal limitations of what city governments can do, I don't know that the city can be a bank to this project for 5 years. And so I'm concerned about the impact to our community, and our community loves rowing and the sport. This is kayaking, they do. So water sports are important to our community, and I want to support that. But I also want to support fiscal responsibility. And so I'm very concerned that 18 months went by without any additional fundraising. You know, that is just concerning. We all know it's about the effort you put behind it when you're working to fundraise. But this is a pretty big hit to our community. And I know this is very stressful, I'm sure, to your organizations, and we want to see this go well. So I want to see what we can do to help you there. But I'm very concerned about what I heard is a possible 5-year extension on this. Is that right?
So I'll start, and I'm sure Matt will jump in and probably has some thoughts. But I'll just start by saying I think one of the biggest challenges is that trying to raise money as fundraisers is really, really challenging when you can't have in-person events. So while, you know, we really have planned to have bigger goals in shorter time frame, now that we've got another variant in place that shut down a lot of people's opportunities to raise money. So there's a lot of foundations, a lot of nonprofits are really struggling right now in terms of just keeping their community engaged. So I don't necessarily think that, you know, 5 years might be a little bit maybe on the conservative side. If things change in the next 6 months where we can start having in-person events much more robustly, then that time frame could certainly change. But I think we're being very conservative right now because we recognize we really don't know what the next year is going to hold for us based on the pandemic and the current situation to host in-person events. That's what I would say in terms of our fundraising for the GPRF and what we would recommend for others. I mean, safety first, so it's challenging.
And I'd like to take a moment to say I understand that concern and I appreciate you sharing it, Councilwoman. But I have gotten to watch firsthand the struggles that the Kenmore Rowing Club and the foundation have gone through really just to stay afloat during the pandemic. And I think a lot of what's happened to so many people in so many different arenas in the pandemic has just been so unpredictable that it's certainly not ideal, but some leeway is certainly helpful to allow the folks to get their feet back under them. And I've been really happy that, you know, I think other less committed groups might have just walked away and said, oh, never mind, we can't do this anymore. And I'm really pleased that all of our partners are still here at the table and still committed to this fundraising campaign and trying to give us a, you know, not telling us what we want to hear, but saying, I think this is the realistic goal and this is our realistic process about how we can accomplish that goal. And so I wanted to take a moment to say that I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I have a question for our city attorney. Is she with us?
She's with us.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So according to the contract, is kind of a limited contract to raise these funds. I don't know that we've been presented with any sort of plan to extend or, you know, being a bank to this project. But what are the limitations to the contract and looking out for Kenmore's interest and the community taxpayer dollars? What happens should the funds not be able to be raised?
Thank you for the question. I apologize. I will have to get back to you in answer. Rob might know that, Rob S., because he worked closely with Kay Broussard of our office who worked on the agreement. But I don't know the answer to that specific question at this moment, but I can definitely provide that to you and the council.
I appreciate that because, you know, $500,000 is a heavy lift if we're left holding that bag. So I want to make sure that we're looking out for our city's interest in the taxpayer dollars and being mindful of, you know, what our responsibilities and duties are. So thank you.
Sure, and I'm happy to speak to that. to the extent that I can. I'm not as familiar with the Strategic Opportunities Fund and exactly how that functions. That might be a question for Letitia at a later time. But the concern about being able to fundraise this gap and making sure that the city wasn't just left holding the bag was something very much on our minds as we developed the lease and the management agreement structure. And so there is language included there, signed off on by Inslee Best and Kay Broussard, as Don references, that if the city feels that sufficient progress is not being made over a predetermined amount of time by the fundraising committee, then the city does have the ability to institute a rent for the users, and that could be the Kenmore Rowing Club, that could be the school district. All the users are aware of that as a possibility sometime in the future, and that would enable the city to help close that gap on some more structured, I guess, timeline in that way. One of the components of that is the agreement stipulated as well that the fundraising committee come before the council and offer updates on how fundraising is progressing. Exactly how often that happens is still to be determined by y'all, the council. I've heard it suggested that be quarterly, that be biannually, that maybe it changes at different stages of the fundraising campaign. I think frequent updates at the start maybe is less important than frequent updates once things are really chugging along. And I don't know if that's a question that needs to be answered tonight, but something to be considered and can be passed along to the fundraising committee for them to come and give y'all updates on the schedule that you prefer.
Thank you. Because, this is a project everybody wants to work, right? We all want it to work. And we all appreciate the partnership that you bring to our city and our community. And that's important. So what are you going to need from us besides awareness of the funding gap and bringing awareness to fundraising for this?
I can just jump in quickly, and then Nell, let me know if there's anything to add, or obviously please correct me at will. Primarily, I'm not a resident of Kenmore, but I'm a longtime member of the rowing community. You as council members actually know, the community members that want to see a unique resource like this thrive and become whole and go ahead and then get this debt off our backs so we can just focus on creating pretty amazing rowing experiences for kids. But especially for our friends at the foundation, they're not in the Kenmore community per se, so all those connections about folks that want to create rowing opportunities for kids, folks that want to go ahead and then see rowing and outdoor recreation be a piece of a vibrant community in Kenmore. We need to build those relationships because we're coming in from the outside. There was a very, very small rowing community in Kenmore, and in the efforts to build it, we're going to rely on really awareness within the community to find ways to connect to it. So if you can help us with that, that'll also have a pretty significant, impact on that timeline. So if we don't have to build those relationships from scratch, but we can rely on your relationships in the community, people that like to see projects like this move forward, that's going to be a big start, a big jump start moving forward.
Hey, Matt, I want to jump in there, Matt. Thank you. As Matt said, he is not a resident of Kenmore. I am a resident of Kenmore. I very much want to see this succeed, not only because I am a resident here, but because I love the rowing community and I've loved rowing for a long time. And I really want to be able to drive down a mile from my house and be able to go rowing. But aside from that, as Matt was saying, the connections in Kenmore, we don't have them yet. I've only been a resident here for 5 years. I already love it, but I don't know that many people yet. So just want to reiterate what Matt said, that we'll need help making those connections and really getting people engaged that live here and that want to see this succeed.
This is, I know it's late, but this is an anecdote that I think is very important. I'm also about 60 feet away from being a resident of Kenmore, so I'm very, very close. My son is 15 years old, and I'm driving him up to the Everett Rowing Association because he is not in the North Shore School District. That's 2.5 hours out of my life, but I love rowing so much. It's worth it for me to go ahead and get him up there and back and play chauffeur, because he needs it for his development as a young man. If he is a resident in Kenmore and a member of this school district, he's going to get, or he would have been able to row for free and go ahead and take advantage of everything that's happening in that boathouse. And when we look at the impact that rowing has on these kids and the doors to collegiate involvement that it opens, all of a sudden $500,000 becomes a very, very small price tag to pay for. I mean, what would be over, let's put it to you this way, over 5 years, many, many millions in collegiate scholarships that these women are going to be taking advantage of when they find themselves rowing in college. No scholarships for men, but there's a different bottom line to this exercise, and you've created the largest public access rowing program really on the West Coast. And so we're going to chase this debt down, but I also just want to go ahead and keep in mind there are other economies to go ahead and roll into this and other benefits that are coming along besides just participation. And it's good to go ahead and keep a note on that. I really wish I lived 60 feet just right in there. It would be a lifesaver right now, but sorry for taking the additional time.
Thank you. I think together we can do and perform marvelous things for our communities. And I really want to see this be a success. So I really appreciate that you're here tonight. Thank you.
All right. If there are no further questions right now, we'll let Patrick get on with his presentation.
Yeah, for certain. Yeah, it's a very brief update on the community excitement and people actually using the boathouse. As Matt alluded to, there are 80 plus students from the North Shore School District that are, holy smokes, to say that these kids are excited about being at the boathouse is, yeah, that's an understatement. They have already begun dedicating a significant amount of volunteer time to come down, get the equipment ready for use, and just be a part of something that they have not had access to in the past. So that's, yeah, just been very exciting to see on a daily and really on every weekend this year. This summer, kind of working our way backwards in the timeline, watching the Kenmore Rowing Club. Can we get in the boathouse yet? Can we get in the boathouse yet? When are the doors going to open? When are the doors going to open? When are the doors going to open? Literally within 36 hours of the doors being opened, the Kenmore Rowing Club had 35 adults on the water this summer and 36 kids on the water this summer, which is a very, very encouraging start. Listening to the participants, they're all talking about how they can get their friends involved, talking with the coaches. Our teams are going to be bigger next semester. More kids are going to know about it. So, yeah, to say that the facility has made an immediate impact is, yeah, I think that's a very accurate statement. Seeing the size of local programs, like Matt mentioned, the Everett program, to see them, take effort to build to a program of 80 to 100 kids, took them years. Something that this facility has done in a very, very short period of time. So again, the investment, your investment, our investment in this exercise is, it seems to be flourishing right from the very get-go. So,
any further questions? Yes, Councilmember O'Kane.
I just have more of a statement. I want to thank each of you for your commitment to bringing rowing to the community of Kenmore. We have a beautiful boathouse. I have absolute faith that we're going to raise that $540,000. And I couldn't imagine being with a better organization to partner with fundraising for than the George Pocock Rowing Foundation. I'm so excited. I think it was wonderful that you came forward with like the straightforward, this is not going to happen overnight, but we're going to get there. And we're going to partner with you to help make that happen. So thank you. I'm excited. And Patrick, the way you spoke about the kids and the excitement on the water, I mean, that's what this is about. The scholarships, Matt, that's what it's about, like really creating opportunity for our community in a really unique and special way. We are in the right location to do this beautifully, and we're off to a great start. So absolute faith in this. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
And Patrick, before I jumped in too early last time, but I wanted to follow up my question. What opportunities are there for the general public to be able to use the boathouse? If you're not a member of the club, or can you, is it expected you might be able to rent a boat at some point, and there might be boats available for use for the public, or what kind of public usage is there?
Yeah, so you would you'd come down, you'd take a rowing class with a bunch of other people that have never experienced the sport before. So yeah, the Kenmore Rowing Club runs regular programming for adults throughout the course of the year to get involved with the sport and get on the water and yeah, take advantage of the facility and the park and the lake. So classes are available through the city's website and through the Kenmore Rowing Club's website as well. So yeah, again, kind of think about just the community nature of what the sport encourages. The sport encourages sort of, participants teach one another, right? Obviously, you have coaches and instructors and like that, but it is a truly welcoming community of people sharing their experience and their knowledge with new participants.
Any boats available for public use, for rental or anything?
It's not would not be a traditional use of rowing equipment to rent it out with the skills required to use the boats and kind of make sure that you return safely. A raw beginner would not, it's not like a paddle board, I guess is my explanation there. So yeah, your point of entry would be through the rowing club, through the classes, and then yeah, like that.
And if I may add to that, Patrick, as you said, we have the Learn to Row classes for adults, and we want it to be very accessible. We have a great new coach who actually used to be with the Pocock Rowing Center. She has lots of experience doing rowing for people who haven't traditionally been able to do it. So I know that she worked with the School of the Blind out in Boston, and some other groups of people who have other accessibility challenges. So we're really excited to see that and to see where we can grow that for our community here. And not only are we going to have scholarships available for students, but we will be providing a reduced cost or fee waiver for the adults in our community also that want to learn to row and come join the community.
Anything else? Thank you all very much.
Councilmember Kugler has her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Kugler.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions more about kind of the mechanics of the partnership. So in terms of the fundraising committee, I understand that it's North Shore School District, George Pocock Rowing Foundation, and Kenmore Rowing Club. And if I understand the agreement correctly, I know George Pocock Rowing Foundation is committed to a year of helping train North Shore School District with stuff. But is there the possibility that that wouldn't continue all 4 years of the fundraising effort? What does that mechanism look like for the partnership long term, or for the duration of the fundraising effort?
Sure, I can hop in and attempt to answer that question as long as you can all hear me. I'll keep my video off in hopes that it stays on. So the commitment that we have in the grant agreement is specifically to contribute 5 hours a week of Patrick's time and 5 hours a week of Nell's time to this effort in fundraising. So we want to make the most use of this incredible resource, which are these talented people with expertise in this space. And we've been pretty open and firm, and I would argue just, specific around making sure that resource is utilized. And so we really believe it's up to the Kenmore Rowing Club and to the school district and this community to use that resource appropriately. I don't have any intention, I don't think the foundation does, if I can speak on behalf of the foundation board, as long as we feel as though, that resource is being appreciated and we're meeting the goals that the foundation has and the values that we have as an organization. I can imagine that we would renew that. But ideally, what we would love to do is have this community in a place where they're able to do this work sort of for themselves instead of us doing it for them. We believe that's really what would lead to a sustainable and long-term organization and boathouse that's really thriving as a community. So for us, we sort of see ourselves as the folks who know how to run boathouses and know how to raise funds for boathouses, and we want to teach others to do for themselves in this way. Ideally, we've done it so well in the next 12 months that we can move on to another boathouse and do that in another community in the Pacific Northwest. But we're committed to this boathouse and we're committed to this community. And this is a very unique situation to be in a community where, the city council and the community members are so invested in the sport. So we see this as a really unique opportunity for us to do this well with you. And that is absolutely something that 12 months from now we'll be reassessing to see where we're at on those measures. But we also know that this is a time unlike any other in the development space. So it's going to be unique, and we're going to work together as a team to figure it out.
Okay, thank you. I have another follow-up question, and that is, what do you think is a good check-in? I mean, as programming starts to get back up and running and people start to participate and, some of the fundraising efforts can start to move forward, like what is a good time for us to reconvene?
I can attempt to answer that one too, but obviously anybody can hop in as well. Fundraising takes time. And as Matt and the others have shared, we're really establishing these relationships from the start in many ways. And so I would argue that 6 months from now would be a good time for us to check in on where we're at with fundraising. Nell should have a sense of some of the pledges, and, we've really got to figure out from the school district who our champions are going to be for this effort. And so if we can do that quickly, I would say, 6 months from now, we may be in a really advantageous position, or we may have, set up at least the structure so that as we develop the relationships, people have a way to come into the organization. And it's so important not only that we establish the relationships, but we steward them, and that we make sure that the folks who are contributing to this effort are appreciated and want to give to the rowing club and want to give to the school district for years to come. Because, one of the things about rowing is that, it's not just a boathouse that costs, significant resources to get it off the ground. We have to purchase boats. We need to make sure that this sport is going to be around for a long time. So we want to have those structures in place. And I would imagine that 6 months from now would be a really great time for us to check in.
All right.
Great. Sorry, can I just share one comment? And that is, I think similar to what other council members have said. I mean, I just joined the council more recently and wasn't part of when the boathouse originally got approved, but I think it's a great asset. I'm super excited about the accessibility. I mean, I think I didn't realize it was one of the only public boathouses on the West Coast. That's huge. And so whatever we can do to partner with you to make this work and get this debt resolved, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to need your help. So we'll absolutely be in touch.
All right. Thank you. We really appreciate you being here tonight. We're really appreciating your input. And Matt, it's really good to see you again. Hopefully, we're going to see you in person here. Someday this will all be over with, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing the crews out on the water. The fact that we've got the 4 high schools involved, I think is just huge for the city and for the region. And this is exciting. And what George Pocock's foundation brings to this is truly unique. And we're very, very pleased to have your participation in this. You guys are synonymous with the word rowing. So thank you all. And hopefully this movie comes out soon. So anyway, thank you all. Next item on the agenda, Staff report, bond update and closing issuance presented by our Finance and Administration Director, Leticia Salcido, and Financial Advisor, Justin Monwai.
Hi, Your Honor and City Council. So Leticia couldn't make it tonight, so I'll pinch hit for her on this topic. So in 2016, our voters approved a $20 million bond measure for walkways and waterways, and we issued the first half of that 20 million in bonds in 2016. And now here we are in 2021 issuing the second half of those bonds, $10 million. And you approved that process earlier this year. And I'm pleased to report that last week we took those bonds to market and we sold them. And we have Justin Monway with Piper Sandler, our senior financial advisor, to talk about how that went.
Thanks, Rob. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Gotcha.
Great. Thanks. Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for having me. I know it's late in the evening, so this bond sale update will be short. But the bond sale went great. And I would say the two biggest factors is that we're at near all-time interest rate lows right now and the city's AAA credit rating. And I have to say, Rob and Leticia did a great job in presenting to S&P, telling the story of Kenmore's strong economic development in the finances. So I think it made it very easy for S&P to affirm the city's AAA rating. But I think the best way to show you how well the bond sale went would be to compare it to what we were projecting when the first series of bonds were sold in 2016. So let me try to do a shared screen. Let's see. That, oh, you see that?
You bet.
Okay. So the true interest cost in 2016, the first series of bonds in 2016, that was at 2.96%. And the 2021 bonds was at 1.89%. So more than a full percentage point lower than back in 2016. If you look at the top table, the graph on the top table there, that is what we had projected the debt service would look like back in 2016, based on the interest rates back then and adding a little bit of cushion. And so the 2016 bonds, which is the orange bars, that was structured with front-loaded debt. And the intention was when the second series of bonds would be issued, we would wrap it around the first series with backloaded debt, so to create an overall level debt structure. So at that time, we were projecting about $1.2 million of average, the $1.2 million average annual debt service per year. And that would equate to about 30 cents per thousand when the bonds were first issued, 30 cents per thousand tax rate of assessed value. And if you look at the bottom table, that is what the actual outcome was after the second series of bonds was issued. And so you see that gap, that dip there, that's just because there was the bonds were actually issued a year and a half after it was initially planned to be issued. But instead of the $1.2 million, it's the average annual debt service is at about $1,055,000. So the tax rate dropped from in the beginning of the 2016 bonds at about 30 cents per thousand, and what we're projecting in the 2022 tax rate to be is about 19 cents per thousand. And so quite a drop in the tax rate. And if the assessed value continues to go up every year, and this assumption here, you see the footnote, assumes 3% assessed value growth per year. Then as the assessed value goes up, because the debt remains the same, the tax rate will actually go down. So assuming a 3% annual assessed value growth at the end of the issue in 2040, that would be at about 11 cents per thousand. But 3% is pretty conservative. The city, since the 2016 bonds were issued, the city actually averages about 8 or 9% average of annual growth per year, 8 to 9%. So, but to be conservative, we're just assuming 3% per year. So, yeah, I think that hopefully helps paint a picture of how well this bond sale went. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, so just in summary, these bonds are costing us $145,000 less per year than we thought they would. So And how about that 1.89% interest rate, huh?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, Justin, you've done an outstanding job representing us and advising us, and you definitely played a big role in the AAA bond rating as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, one last thing, Aquatic Center. So the county grant has finally come available for siting study money. And I've asked Stephanie Lukash to give a quick update on that.
I'm promoting Stephanie right now. Just stand by.
Hi, so it's really late and we could talk a long time about bringing an aquatic center pool to Kenmore, but I will share with you there's some grant money that's available. It's $13 million. King County has this money. It's the Parks, Recreation, Trails, and Open Space Levy. And so it opens this week and we are planning to apply for two proposals, kind of one with Lake Forest Park and Shoreline, so kind of a northwest, and then a Kirkland partnership, more of a northeast, and $100,000 siting studies for each is what our plan is. So happy to take questions and share a lot more as this process goes on. Closes on October 15th, so we'll be working on this over the next month.
Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Bothell, what was the take on Bothell?
Well, Bothell was in the meeting with us and they were not in a position to join in the partnership. So we are doing one with Kirkland.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Looks like Councilmember Shrevenick has her.
Shrevenick, yep.
Similarly, I can't remember, is the grant open to school districts? And if so, when can SD involved?
It is school districts are metropolitan park districts and then cities and towns. So it is, we are, obviously we'll look for them for a letter of support with our school district, but looking to partner with the cities that I mentioned for the actual grant application for the.
More pointedly, they weren't interested in doing a siting study, correct?
Well, I think that they're interested in partnering with us in being supportive of this. They're interested in it, but I think that they wanted us to take the lead. And so that's what we're doing. We're committed. We want to find a way to bring some aquatic centers, maybe two, to our area. So we'll see what happens with this. And we understand that the decision will be made fairly quickly. So that's what we've been told. So it won't be, months and months and months of waiting. So that's helpful.
God, I just gotta say, I just like to see all angles pressed, for all options. But that's an ideal world. But still, anyway, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
I've seen a few yawns in the last 15 minutes or so.
Oh yeah.
My staff report is now complete.
All right. Councilmember reports and comments. Let's start with Councilmember O'Kane.
I don't have any comments tonight. Thank you for everyone for your presentations tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yeah, I just still on my mind. I hope that we can pursue all angles with a public pool. Just somewhat concerned about making sure we have the right geographic fit, that it's close enough for Kenmore so we can use it. But anyway, we'll move forward. Thanks.
Councilmember Kugler.
I just want to thank staff for all of the presentations. We had a really packed agenda today, got a lot of stuff done, and there's a lot of really great things in motion. So thank you so much for everyone's work.
Councilmember Shrevenick.
Yeah, it was a great evening. I concur with Councilmember Marshall on exploring all angles. For the pool, I also, and I've said this before, I really would like us to end by 10. If we have extra agenda items, they can go to the next meeting, and maybe we can plan the agenda so that we're more likely to end at 10. It's unfair for our public. And it really becomes not a public meeting after that. So I just want us to be sensitized to that.
All right. Councilmember File.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. I was just going to say I had a great scenic tour with Kenmore Air Harbor. I got to see Kenmore from the air, which is exciting and fun. Boy, is our land dry. That's what I learned. And the algae blooms are large. So just a bit of, what we're dealing with a climate crisis, right? And global warming. But we definitely need to kind of address those algae issues. And I want to congratulate Ms. Debbie Bent on her 23 years with the city of Kenmore. That's a huge anniversary and something to be really proud of. We are really grateful for your service. And I would also like to say the Kenmore rental moratorium is going to expire at the end of September. And I'm concerned we need to bring this back for renewal given COVID and a number of additional issues related to unemployment is going to stop for folks. And, there have been federal changes. And so I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Everybody in agreement to bring this back for extension? Yep. So let's go ahead and get that on the agenda here as soon as possible. Your cat really seems to be enjoying this meeting, Councilmember O'Kane. That's fine. It's good to see the pets.
He says he agrees with Councilmember Shrebnick. It's a little late. He needs my time.
There you go. All right. Well, you got to split your time between a cat and a dog. And I think there's some kids in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's a full house.
So anyway.
So we do plan on bringing that back then on the 27th.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Do you want to thank Councilmember File for bringing up the eviction moratorium? I read something early, I guess late last week, saying that 1 in 4 renters in Washington State were worried about that they could be evicted. In Kenmore, that would amount to somewhere around, just kind of rough numbers, 1,500 to 1,600 residents losing housing. So extending the moratorium, I think, is really important, especially with to really give King County time to get their rental assistance money out because they need some more time to do that. So I appreciate that and look forward to that discussion on the 27th. I would hold up my cat right now, but he is very happily asleep next to me. And thank everybody for their time tonight.
Yes, we missed him parading behind you tonight. All right. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add except there are agreements for Sound Transit and not Sound Transit, for ETP and Seashore that staff will handle. There's really nothing for us to do. Probably be on a consent agenda here to keep us in good with the transportation committee. So anyway, nothing further to come but before us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're out of here. Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Night, everyone.